Ladies and gentlemen, would you please find a seat and we'll start the meeting? I call to order the meeting of the Destin City Council and would like to ask Reverend Russ Whitten, Destin Church of Christ, to come forward to lead us in invocation. I believe let's stand and have 30 seconds of silence then, please. Mr. Marler, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
We have a special presentation this evening. Ms. Lejeune, would you like to introduce the speaker?
Mr. David Barton is here this evening to talk about the ancillary benefits and health plan renewal recommendations for the city staff. Okay. Karen is going to do that. Sorry.
I apologize for the confusion. Normally, I would go ahead and introduce, and then David Barton and Scott Finchermaker are here for questions. So. As in typical, we put together our benefits quality team, which is comprised of our brokers, HR, finance, and a cross section of staff members to help us filter through all of the decisions that need to be made about medical renewals and ancillary benefits. So this agenda item was brought forward to you covering all of those information. As you can see, we were able to get renewals from Aetna, United Healthcare, and Blue Cross Blue Shield, and then also with our ancillary benefits through Guardian. So we have decided, after some plan design changes, we were able to hopefully request the renewal of a 3% Aetna increase, and stay with the current provider, obviously, but also to help assist staff with the increase of maximum out-of-pocket costs. We asked that we could add a hospital indemnity program to help them with those high deductibles and max out-of-pockets. So there's a lot of information there. Hopefully you had enough time to read it, and I'll open it with any questions, but we're asking pretty much to renew with Aetna and also to renew with Guardian. And then our suggestion would be to add the hospital indemnity plan, the lower option, which is $17,024 annually, instead of the actual more expensive option, just to help offset those costs. Any questions for myself or the brokers?
Councilmember Dixon.
Yes, Karen, and this one probably have to be answered by Mr. Barton or somebody from his firm, but I wanted to see if there is a way that the city council members could be calculated in this with the full knowledge that the council members would have to pay 100% of the premium cost I know that sometimes council members may be able to beat this rate or whatever it may be, but I would like to add it as an option for council members to be able to purchase this insurance if possible. What would that entail?
Yes, sir. I was aware of this morning, so I tried to get some research done quite quickly. Back in 2012, I believe former HR manager Chuck Garcia put together a resolution for the current council at that time, Resolution 202, which did not pass. But it also included whether to offer those benefits to council at full premium, zero premium. So there was a lot of nuances with that. So I would have to ask city attorney if a resolution is needed to have elected officials or be able to require them to be able to have that benefit. And I know this is just in front of you right now, so if you need some time and to bring it back, I'm assuming, but.
Yes, I recommend that that be adopted in that format.
If you would like so, then I could redo that resolution and bring that back for you. I'd have to ask David Barton. I don't know if that's a possibility our policy is written for renewals.
If you would, can we go ahead and find out, please? He's here.
Yes, sir.
I move to authorize the city manager to renew existing ancillary benefits with Guardian to include the hospital indemnity policy option 1 and to accept Aetna's proposal of PPO Plan MCOA 2000/80 with its companion health savings account Plan MCOA 3000/80 that represents a 3% rate increase to be effective September 1, 2016.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, but obviously, we might need to amend it based on the information we're hearing. Is that?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll go into discussion.
Mr. Dixon, how are you, sir? We will have to go back to Aetna, assuming you guys want to make that available to the city council members and see if they will allow us to do that. Since the ACA came out, there are some changes in some of those allowances, and there's a possibility they may not allow that. Typically, you do have to have W-2 income in order to participate in any kind of benefits. And they would not allow, if they do allow you to be on the plan, I don't believe they're going to allow you to treat yourselves differently than the employees. So the employees would have to be covered the same way you're covered. If the employees are paid at 100% like they are now, that means you guys would be paid at 100% by the city as well.
Well, that'd be all right, too.
Yeah. I thought you might be okay with that.
Say that.
But that is something we're going to have to actually go to Aetna. We already emailed them today, this afternoon, to ask them that question. We have not heard from them yet.
I personally would not use this insurance, and I'm basically speaking for maybe some other council members that might. And sometimes it's very difficult to get insurance on your own. I pay for mine, but I just thought that if there's council members up here that are paying maybe a lot more and for lesser insurance, they might be able to pay for and take advantage of this. So, I don't know what we need to do. I guess I'll go ahead and, I really don't know what to do, I guess, but I was going to say I'd make a motion that we would ask the staff to come back with some sort of a resolution for us to consider, or before that maybe is to ask whether or not that the insurance company would accept it. So.
Well, we will certainly find out fairly quickly, and the renewal's 9/1 anyway. It's a September 1st renewal, so we do have time to find out and bring that back to council prior to the renewal.
Okay, just so everybody knows, I want to make sure this is absolutely clear that the council would not get any payment from the city for this plan, that the council member would have to pay 100% for the plan.
Okay,
So,
and that's the way we'll present it to them.
Clarification, are you talking council member only or council member and family?
Whatever is with the city employees, council member families, and, yeah.
I think it might be advisable to get both options at least.
Yeah, yes,
Assess
sir,
it.
yes, sir.
Yeah, if they do allow you as an employee to be on there, they will definitely allow your family members to come on as well.
Sounds kind of unlikely anyway, but try if you would.
I would bet against it at this point, but I will certainly try to find out for you quickly.
And obviously, we might need to add mayor to that as well. Council and mayor?
Yes.
Well,
All elected officials, but, yeah.
I'm not too sure I need it, but that would be for the next guy. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second on the table. I will call for the vote if there's no further discussion or comment. I did not allow any public comment at the start of this, maybe on this particular. Is public comment required here, Mr.?
Yes, sir, you should open for public comment on the item.
This is going backwards, but is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this? Being,
Mayor?
I'm sorry, I do, Councilmember Ramsell?
Thank you, Mayor. Do we need to restate the motion or amend it to bring back not only the recommended motion, but add to it the subsequent conversation that we're having? Or is it fine as stands?
I think the question was to be asked whether or not the insurance company would even allow it first, and then maybe see.
Mr. Miller, I'm assuming that we can just make a motion
Yes,
at
sir,
a later
Mr.
date.
Barton's reported that he'll bring back the information.
And then a
If you
motion.
feel like you needed to direct him to do that, then you may, but he's been a pretty dependable fellow.
Thank you. Any further discussion? You may vote. Have a unanimous yes. I'd ask anyone in the audience, please, to shut your cell phones off or silence them, as I'm doing mine right now. Thanks for the reminder. You all have had the minutes from the May 3rd, 2016 meeting. Any changes, additions? If not,
Motion to approve.
we have a motion to approve, second. Motion approved, second. All those in favor, vote yes. Unanimous yes. We have an opportunity for public to speak on propositions. That would be 3, 9A, 10A, 14, 15, all those below. At this time, unless a member of the council would like to set aside the order of the day and do this in a different order. If not, I'll call Scott Munson to speak on number 9A.
So Scott Monson, 97 Sunflower Court. First of all, thank you for your service. We know it takes a tremendous amount of your time and effort to represent us here on the dais, and we really appreciate that. And please send a thanks to your family, because we know they give up precious time with you. So my second point is, I understand that Darrell Shelton is going to be nominated for the local planning agency. I would sincerely hope that you would join me in voting for him for that position. I think he's a very outstanding member of our community here. He cares deeply about our community, and I think he would be a great addition to that. And then, point of question, I've got something that's not one of the items on the agenda. Can I speak to that real quickly? Or do I need to come back at the end?
You need to come back at the end of the
Okay.
session.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Ann Wines. This will be on 21A. Is there a motion to set aside the order of the day? You need to speak now. Okay, we have a
Yeah.
motion, we have a
I'll
second.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please vote yes. And just to confirm, is that going to be for the single item, 21A? And you didn't mean to include any other item in that motion? I have two cards on that. We'll hold both until 21A. Okay, we have a consent agenda resolutions. Resolution 16-11. Mr. Miller, would you read by title?
Yes, Mayor. Resolution 16-11 by title is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Destin, Florida, supporting the establishment of the Choctawhatchee Bay Estuary Program for the comprehensive management, restoration, and protection of the Choctawhatchee Bay Estuary, supporting Okaloosa and Walton counties jointly submitting a proposal to the Environmental Protection Agency for funding of this program, providing for transmittal, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Ms. Lejeune, do you have an explanation?
Yes, sir. In 2015, the Okaloosa County Board of Commissioners unanimously approved a resolution expressing support for the Northwest Florida Estuaries and Watersheds Project. It will establish an estuary program for the comprehensive management, restoration, and protection of 7 Northwest Florida estuaries, that being Perdido, Pensacola, St. Andrew, Apalachicola, Ocklawakanee, St. Marks, and Choctawhatchee. I'm still learning how to pronounce these. And then subsequent to that action, the EPA was awarded funding from the Gulf Coast Ecosystem Restoration Council to stand up one estuary program in the amount of $2 million. And the county is asking that we also show our support for this program by approving a resolution.
Mr. Braden?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make the motion. Move that the Destin City Council adopt Resolution 16-11 and forward it to the Okaloosa County Board of Commissioners.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Discussion? I see no discussion. I call for the vote. We have a unanimous yes. We will start project reports and comments from mayor and council. We'll begin with Mr. Morgan.
Nothing tonight, Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Destin.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't like to bring unagended items up too often, but this one came up over the weekend, and it's not too complicated, but the RFP that we have put out on Saturday to find a new city manager, I'm sorry, it's not city manager, thank you. City attorney, I know.
We got her.
I know, she was quick on that one. Yes, to find a new city attorney. I believe we're only holding it open for about 2 weeks, and where I'm coming from on the 2-week time frame is that I believe it's a little too short. My thought process is that the position's a little too important, and I don't think we really want to be seen as rushing into the process. You know, it was an abrupt termination, and I don't think we should be following it with an abrupt hiring. And being an attorney myself, I know how crunched all of our calendars are. I genuinely don't think 2 weeks is long enough. So to that end, I would propose that we keep it open and extend it for 60 days. That way we can cast a net more broadly, and we can make sure that we don't end up revisiting this by hastily going in, hiring somebody, and then having to do the process over again. Just my thought process on it. So to that end, I was going to move that we direct staff to extend the time frame for the RFP for the services of city attorney from 2 weeks to 60 days. and I believe that would put a new deadline somewhere around, I believe, Monday, September 19th.
Ms. Lejeune, would you or staff like to comment on, I guess you don't have past experience with us, but if we do have past experience as to how long we really need to have these out, and will we have to re-advertise and start the process over again if we do change it to 30 days?
Yes, sir. I had a brief conversation with our finance director this morning regarding this, and I do believe that he just has a few comments that will help bring additional information to the process.
I don't think we've ever put any proposal out for 60 days. Part of the reason is if you put too large of a window out on an RFP, especially something that's not as complicated like an RFP for a new attorney, rather it is a very important position with the city, but it's not a construction of a mile of road that requires a detailed proposal. It'll get stale, and you might have attorneys who would look at it and then not respond because it's so far out, they forget about it and never get the notice turned in. If you would like to extend it, I would recommend maybe a little compromise, and maybe do a full 30-day advertisement on it. It just advertised last weekend, so if anybody's picked the proposal up, we'll send out a addendum letting them know the extension of the advertisement for a full 30 days. And I think 30 days probably is sufficient to get enough responses that will probably satisfy your need.
Yeah, that's fine. I can amend my motion to 30 days. I had thrown out 60 sort of as an arbitrary length of time that I knew that probably most people could get in, but 30 is likely to work just as fine.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. I'm sorry, I didn't take your original comments as a motion, or would ask for a second at that time. Mr. Foreman?
Yeah, I think my question is Mr. Shirley filling in? Is he available for that period of time?
Mr. Shirley?
I'll do it if you need me to do it, I'll do it.
You will be out of town 1 week,
I will be out of town for the next meeting. That
so
will
we
be
still
Mr.
have
Mills.
coverage, okay.
Correct.
Excellent. Any further discussion? Mr. Braden?
Thank you, Mayor. And we do have the option to decline all applicants after 30 days, do we not? And put it back out for another 30 days if we feel like we haven't gotten somebody that's qualified?
When the proposals come in, the bid committee will get them, and we will just organize them in a format for you to review them. If you choose to interview the candidates here in a public meeting, then we'll arrange that for you at the next council meeting after they come in. But at that point, if you don't find any of them to be of the quality that you want or for the rate that you feel like you should be paying, then you can reject all proposals and we'll redo the RFP. So it's going to be in your hands no matter what.
Okay, thank you. And with Mr. Shirley filling that role, do we not need to compensate him for that extra role, or how's that work?
What I have done is my contract allows me to bill by the hour for any other projects that the city council deems worthy of my work. And so I just opened a billing account for called interim city attorney, and I'm just going to invoice for it.
Okay.
That probably save you money, because otherwise I'd want everything Mr. Miller makes plus what I make.
Gotcha.
At least for the interim period of time.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Marler?
Just so we're under procedure, I think Mr. Destin needs to make a motion to set aside the agenda first before we can vote on the other motion. I believe that, since it's not an agenda item, isn't that correct?
Mr. Miller? Do we need to set aside the council?
Or either leave to the vote of your extraordinary vote, but
Either way.
the more proper approach is to each time ask for a motion to set aside the order of the day to consider the matter.
I think we're far enough along, we can ask for an extraordinary vote. We can always go back and redo it if it doesn't work. Councilmember Ramswell.
Thank you, Mayor. Since you brought it up, actually, it might be a good time. I would like to actually see the contents of Mr. Shirley's contract and make sure everything's being done equitably.
Okay. I guess we'll request a copy of the contract for future reference. Obviously, we'll probably will not get that tonight.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? If not, I call for the vote. We have unanimous yes. That's certainly 2/3.
Mayor, I have no further items.
Councilmember Marlar.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of quick catch-up items. We received an email first from Mike Schultz about some problems at Clement Taylor Park, and I had talked with Clarice about that. I just wanted to give an update on the situation there, and then I have two other items.
Yes, sir. I would like Mr. Lance Johnson to come up. They've been working diligently to address all those issues, and he can tell you what they've been doing.
Yeah, I just received an email from Mr. Schultz this afternoon. He was tickled that we were able to get an additional swim rope going out the property line that meets up with the outer edge of our swimming area. So now there's 2 swim ropes out there. I hope that makes sense. It'll help him because it'll prevent people from swimming over to his side of the property line, so that's good. We've also, working with him, identified a few additional signs that we needed to put up. One is about dogs. So we have new signs that have been put up out there about dogs in that particular facility, actually directing them to use our dog park. And additionally, we put up signs on our pier, one facing out towards Crab Island and one facing towards the park, so that folks who are on a boat coming in know that that's a public pier, and hopefully will prevent them from going to the private pier to the south of where we are. So we are working with him on those. And additionally, we're ordering 2 more signs that will restrict the swimming area. I've never had to put these up, but we've had some motorized vessels actually come into our designated swimming area. So we're having signs made that restrict that from having motorized watercraft in that area too.
And we've also been, our code enforcement staff has been working very closely with the sheriff's office. The sheriff's office has been doing periodic patrols at night. One person has been trespassed, another person was issued a warrant for breaking a trespass that was placed upon them, and code compliance is checking daily to make sure that there are no vehicles that are there throughout the day with people sleeping in them. So we're being very, very diligent with the activities going on in the park.
Councilmember Foreman.
We don't close the parks at night, do we, or do we? If they're closed, then they should be closed.
We do not close a gate at our parks, but by ordinance, our parks are closed at sundown.
Okay.
Okay. I got 2 more little less quick items. He's not here tonight. I noticed that Stephen Mitchell had sent us an email, which was very interesting, and I just asked Clarice to get with the DOT and find out exactly why the crosswalks are all different sizes instead of all being confirmed. I thought Mr. Mitchell did a great, diligent job, especially getting up that early in the morning to go out and measure when there was no traffic to do that. So if we could, I'd like to, I'd really like an explanation from DOT on why the crosswalks are all different sizes. So, we can do that.
Yes, sir. I'll have our Director of Public Services reach out to FDOT and find out why they did that. I'm sure there's some method behind it.
All right, and to some of the public who have been naysayers since we put them in, be careful what you ask for, because, I mean, it's going to slow traffic down, which is exactly part of the point that we were trying to do in 98. So I want people to understand that they're not going away, they are there. I mean, we can't force every pedestrian to actually use it, because I still see jaywalkers every day. But I think it's the right step in making Highway 98 safe. If it takes you a few more minutes to get where you're going, then that means you were going too fast to begin with, and the lights are signalized to help that. And my final item is, Clarice, you also sent a email out about more trees on 4th Street, and I'm going, what's left? You know, I'm curious now what they had to cut. They still didn't cut that one I told looks really sad by itself.
Yes, sir. Again, it's unfortunate we have no control over what trees Gulf Power cuts. However, they did do as we asked, and they contacted us beforehand to let us know that they were cutting them.
That's all I have, Mayor.
If I can steal a second of your time, I just wanted to point out that the letter to the editor in the paper was not from Jim Woods, our ex-city council member, who probably should have as much credit for the crosswalks as anyone in this room. And I'm sorry I jumped to that conclusion this morning. Everyone in City Hall, when they read it, knew it wasn't you. So, thank you. Mr. Foreman.
Nothing, Mayor.
Mr. Dixon.
Nothing tonight, Mayor, thank you.
Councilmember Ramswell.
Thanks. Actually, I was trying to find the email that Councilman Marler was referencing about the trees. Did that go out to all of council? Or was that just a personal?
I thought it did.
No, it did. As soon as I was notified by staff that Gulf Power had contacted them, additional trees were going to be coming down, I sent that information out to council.
Okay, I'll dig through. For some reason, I don't recall it, but no biggie. The first thing I'd like to do is actually present the nomination of Mr. Daryl Shelton to the Local Planning Agency Committee. I know most of us up here are very familiar with Mr. Shelton. He's come and spoke on a variety of issues. He's very well informed and keeps abreast of most of the issues in this city. So I would like to make that nomination for Daryl Shelton to Local Planning Agency.
I'll second.
We have a nomination. We have a second. Discussion? Being no discussion, I call for the vote.
Great. Right, he'll be
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't have my mic on. It is unanimous, and Mr. Shelton's in the audience. If you would like to stand up and wave, tell us who he... Congratulations. Councilmember Braden, do you have... Ramswell, do you have anything else?
I do, actually. I'd like to make note, this is actually the 10th anniversary of the Destin Junior Lifeguard Program. We've got about 120 kids this year. We have to cap it. We've had to cap it the last couple of years. We have such a tremendous response. And I believe this program was actually put into place by my fellow councilman here. So just wanted to share that with you all. It's a really exciting, amazing program. It teaches safety and all sorts of awareness on the beach to children. So I'm actually involved with the program, so of course I like it, but it is great. The other thing I'd like to bring up, and it's sort of a sore subject, but we've received enough calls and emails on it, and I just wanted to get some clarification. I just got another email, and it concerns the porta potty issue. I was wondering if you could shed some light on that, because now I'm being told that the dates were different. It was supposed to be held, a hearing was supposed to be held one day. It was not, so people can, if you could just sort of explain, I know you've been CC'd on these emails, and if you could kind of give a synopsis of what's happening, I would really appreciate it, and I think the public would too.
You're asking City Manager.
Yes, ma'am. When it came to light that there was going to be a continuous, I did send all of that information out to all members of the council, so everyone was made aware. I would like to ask Mr. Shirley, however, if he's able to give some of the details that I was not able to put into the email.
Yes, when the original notice of violation went out with a schedule, sorry about that, let me get this straight, with an original scheduling of July 14, which was literally 2 weeks after the notice of violation was sent, which is a very short period of time to actually schedule a code hearing. And so the attorneys representing the alleged violator asked to talk to me, and we talked, and they said they had scheduling conflicts for that date, and there hadn't been very much time at all, notice-wise, and would I agree to continue it to a date in August. And so we worked out the date of August 11th, so that's what it's currently set for. The attorneys and their witnesses were all available for that date. I'm available for that date. And so that's when it will be held. And that is going to be heard by the city's special magistrate, Mr. Tom Remington.
Okay, great. So it is August 11th. And then I'm now getting another email that says, I guess the violation said that the hearing date was the 14th, but yet it happened on the 12th. And people were concerned that they couldn't come and express their insight or concerns.
This will not be a hearing at which neighbors will be allowed to testify. This is a trial-type hearing on alleged violations to which the city is a party and to which the alleged violator is a party. We've been back and forth through this before with other parties who want to interject into the process, and they are not allowed to participate.
Great. Thanks for clarifying. That's all I have.
Councilmember Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. It's had the nomination of Myra Williams to the Environmental Parks and Recreation Committee/Tree Board.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? No discussion. Call for the vote. It's a unanimous yes. Ms. Williams, is she in the audience? Ah, there we go. Congratulations.
Where are we with our tree ordinance that we were supposed to be putting some teeth in while we're on that subject?
Yes, sir. At the last meeting, I was directed to put together a RFP to put out to find a professional who could assist the Environmental Parks and Recreation Committee and Tree Board to put together the ordinance. The Tree Board has received 3 separate ordinances from other municipalities that I believe is what the council is looking for. They will be meeting on July 26th to start going over those 3 ordinances. I would say that anyone who is interested is invited to attend, and they can make their comments known to the tree board. While they are working and pulling different elements from those other ordinances, an RFP will be going out, and I'm hoping that by October, we will be able to hire a professional that will then write the ordinance along with the assistance of the tree board. I understood from comments from council from the last meeting that there was a concern that we didn't keep the tree board out of the loop, so I'm trying my best to keep them involved as well as hire a professional to write the ordinance.
Okay, thank you so much. And I had another question. I just wondered if Mr. Campbell had any updates at all on the signage issue that we got over on North Lakeside Drive. Do you have anything on that?
I don't have anything yet. I was out last week and trying to get my bearings this week. We'll work on it.
No problem. Judge had it here, just wanted to ask. That's all I have right now, Mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Miller, comments?
I have no items, Mayor, thank you.
Mr. Shirley?
Nothing here, thank you.
We have a request for RFP 16-09, City Manager Search and Recruitment Process. That is moot at this time. I would accept a motion to reject all proposals so that we clean this up.
So moved.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote yes. Unanimous yes. Establishment of the fiscal year 2017 tentative millage rate and budget hearing dates. Ms. Lejeune?
Yes, sir. I would like to bring our Finance Director, Mr. Bragg Farmer, up to go through this item for the council.
Normally, we hold our two budget hearings at our regular council meetings in September. The way they're organized by the state, the school district has first option of days for their meetings, their two hearings. The county has the next option for their two hearings, and then we fall to the bottom, having to work around their set meeting dates. We very rarely have a conflict with the school district, and this year we do not have a conflict. The county, on the other hand, they've hired a new budget and compliance officer, and he scheduled both of the county budget hearings for the same time as both of our council meetings in September. Because of that, I'm requesting that we have to change our budget hearings, and we're just going to coincide those with our council meetings. And we're looking at changing our budget hearings from a Monday on a Tuesday, which is the Tuesday after Labor Day, and the following meeting on the Monday, we're going to move the Tuesday meeting to a Thursday, September 8th, and we're going to move the next council meeting from a Monday the 19th to Tuesday the 20th, so that we do not conflict with either one of those entities.
Mayor, I just wanted to add that I did reach out to Mr. John Hofstad, the Okaloosa County Administrator, and he was very apologetic about the oversight. He did offer to bring it to his council to see if they would be willing to change the dates since ours got stepped on, but they're not meeting till tomorrow night. So we went ahead and we changed our dates this year, and Mr. Hofstad and I agreed that we are going to communicate more closely next year when we're setting these budget hearing dates.
Thank you. Question?
Tell me the dates that you're, in September, that you're...
The dates that we're scheduling for?
Yes.
September 8th and September 20th.
Okay. I will be out of town on the 8th.
Well, that's just a suggested day on my part. The county, of course, Monday is a holiday.
Yeah.
Tuesday is when the counties schedule their meeting. We've tried in the past to avoid a Wednesday meeting so that we don't run abreast with church activities, unless you choose to have it on a Wednesday. That would be your call.
Well, I've got 2 weeks in September that I'll be gone, so whatever it is, I'll either be there or I won't be there.
It'd be good if we can get these dates firm kind of far out. I'd like to be out of state at least a week in September, but I can work around the dates at this point if we can get some firm dates.
I'm out the 20th and 21st, so I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I mean, this is,
Apparently, you're not going to work with all of our schedules, so if we can get dates as quickly as possible, then we'll try to work within those.
that's the dates that are currently in the motion. I have to affirm the dates with the state, with the county, with the property appraiser, by August the 4th. And typically in this meeting, this council meeting, we set those dates. I know we're having a council meeting, I guess we have a planned CRA meeting in a week. If you would like to delay this and potentially convene after that as a council meeting to
You can have my proxy. I trust your judgment.
Okay. I mean, you know, it is hard to, you just have to remember that in September, those 2 September meetings are our budget hearings. You know, usually the Tuesday and a Monday, right?
I apologize my newness. Have not gone through this process before, but when the certification of the taxable millage rate, it becomes effective and firm at what point? When do we act, are you getting ready to submit this for the future hearing at this date?
Correct. All we're doing is setting our tentative millage rate, which is at 1.5 mils, which is what we're currently taxing at, and we're setting our 2 hearing dates. So that's what we're doing today.
My understanding is once you set a tentative millage rate, you cannot raise it. You can reduce it, but you cannot raise it. And I guess my uncomfort level here is if we set it now, our budget is not really firm at this point. It seems like we got the cart before the horse. We ought to see our budget and then look at the millage rate. Should this be set at a higher rate that we can later reduce to meet our budget requirements? And maybe council.
Absolutely, you can do that. And that's, in past years, that's what we've done. But that's your call. And what we've done is we balanced our budget based on our current millage rate. And if you would like to adopt a higher millage rate, you can make that change in the recommended motion, and we can move forward from there.
Obviously,
Adopt a tentative.
Tentative millage.
Tentative, and then later then it can be reduced.
Correct.
Obviously, I cannot make a motion, and it's out of my hands, but I put that on the table for council's consideration as they make a motion.
I would make the motion, except for the dates he's got in here, I won't be available.
I think you can make the motion even if you don't attend.
Think so?
Thanks. I don't know why. Councilmember Ramsell?
Thank you, Mayor. I know we have a lot of issues right now, and including major stormwater problems, a lot of things that we don't have current funding for that have been set aside for years and years and years because we don't have funding. We don't have a stormwater utility. So I'm going to beat that horse. That's a terrible expression, but I'm going to bring that up again, that, you know, we really need to look at trying to get some funding to take care of issues that continue to be significant problems in our community, number one being stormwater. And I have brought this up, I believe last year, I brought it up the year before, but especially since this is a tentative setting, I would like to recommend making a tentative millage of 1.7 and requesting that Mr. Farmer come back with some numbers on what exactly that would mean to us. It sounds like a lot, but I remember from doing the math a couple years ago, sometimes it's as little as it's only affecting you by $10 or $20. I mean, it's something very minimal, but yet that can lead to some really good revenue brought in for us to take care of some things that need to be taken care of and we've been unable to do. So that would be, I would be completely in favor and would hope you guys, I mean, obviously, as we said before, we can drop it back down, but for the purposes of discussion and taking a look at things, I would recommend bumping it up a little and seeing if that is something we want to do. If not, we can always decrease it again.
If that's if that's the direction you want, and you're making the motion for the council, then what I would ask you to do is read the recommended motion and just change the 1.5 mils to 1.7 mils as you read it, as it's written.
If I could interject, what's the maximum we can set, 1.9 or 2?
Two.
Two, okay. Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion. I move that the council set the tentative millage rate for ad valorem taxes at 1.700 mils, and confirm the date and times of the public hearings.
The recommended motion, that's a critical part.
Okay, but that would not be less than the rollback
That's-
rate.
Actually, it's more. I think I got that word verbiage wrong.
It'll
Right.
then be more than the rollback rate.
Correct, which is why I left
Okay,
it out.
if you'll just make that change. That's a critical
Okay.
part of it.
I move that the council set the tentative millage rate for ad valorem taxes at 1.7 mils, which would be more than the rollback rate of 1.4808 mils, and confirm the date and times of the public hearings for the fiscal year 2017 budget for September 8 and 20th, 2016 at 6 p.m.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second that, Mayor.
I have a motion. We have a second. Discussion, Mr. Braden?
Thank you, Mayor. With, when you were planning with the 1.5, was that taking into consideration the hiring some personnel for the building department that is in desperate need of some people? And, I mean, we could use probably 3 more code enforcement officers. I know we've talked about that this whole year, and we was talking about we was going to budget for that, but I thought you just said that we're just basically going off the same budget we had last year.
That's correct. There were requests from the departments for additional staffing, but when the Director of Finance and I sat down and tried to bring in a balanced budget at the 1.5 mils, there was no room for additional. We are right now in the process of hiring a new community development director. That's already been budgeted this year. We're trying to hire a new building inspector. That also was budgeted for this year. We may have one shift from a part-time to full-time, but other than that, the 1.5 mil does not allow us to hire any additional staffing at this time.
But I think we're gonna have to increase it then, because we don't have the staff over there to, I mean, that's why we have multiple businesses in the area that's operating without our business tax receipt that we require, or every workshop we have, every stakeholders meeting we have, code enforcement, we don't have code enforcement. We even admit we don't have enough code enforcement. The building department, I mean, they just overworked. I would just go sit and watch for, a couple hours. We're going to come up with some money somewhere, because we desperately need some help.
I would like to clarify.
Thank you. Councilmember Dixon?
Go ahead, Mr. Snow.
You're up, Mr. Morgan.
All right.
Okay. Didn't speak fast enough.
Before we stop, who goes a little bit, little bit, little bit?
Yeah, you speak a couple words, I'll speak a couple.
Yeah.
Real quick on the business tax receipts, I think one of the reasons, although we definitely need more code enforcement officers, or at least one dedicated to the harbor, I did get some clarity on that, and I think it's not necessarily a lack of code enforcement officers. I think it's a lack of, if a business is operating without a local business tax receipt, we have no real recourse against it. There's no teeth, and where she came from in Boynton Beach, if you're operating without a BTR, you're fined $500 per day, the property owner, and you can face up to 6 months in jail. Now, that's got teeth. Here, our recourse is nothing, essentially. So even if we had a code enforcement officer, we wouldn't have any way to get them to comply with our codes, because it has no teeth, which is something that we've identified, and hopefully we'll be bringing this up and fixing. So.
Councilmember Dixon?
Yes, thank you. Have we got preliminary numbers yet from the property appraiser's office? And if so, what's our percentage increases?
We had a 5.26% increase this year.
5.26%. So that means we can keep the millage rate at 1.5 and still get a 5 point whatever percent increase. right?
Correct, about $300,000.
Yeah. Okay, I'll support tonight to set the tentative at that, but I want us to work like crazy to get back to the 1.5 if we can, so.
Councilmember Ramsell?
Thank you. Mr. Farmer, do you have any idea? I know our millage rate is exceptionally low, at least from speaking to other officials at League of Cities. What sort of a comparison is there? Are we the bottom 25%? And do you have any idea? And if you don't, could you come up with some?
We're in the bottom 5%, but
Bottom
you got to take
5%.
that into context. We also have a property value at a rate that's significantly higher than a lot of other cities. So
And we don't offer the same services.
And correct, we don't have a fire department or a police department, sanitation department, electricity, utility, cable. We don't have any of that service, so it's all relative, I guess. But we do have one of the lowest in the state of Florida.
Do you have an estimate on the number of items that I know I've discussed with you, and I'm sure others have discussed with you, of almost emergency needs? I know at one point Mr. Campbell had a list of significant issues dealing with stormwater and engineering issues throughout the city. My concern here is, obviously, we've talked about the stormwater issues a lot because there's a significant problem there. We've got deteriorating lines, things are falling apart. But if you could put a number on items such as the stormwater problem and other things that we really need to take care of in order to be able to take care of our citizens, what number would that be?
Probably millions. It would be millions. I mean, setting the millage rate, kind of like Councilman, like y'all have talked, there's nothing wrong with setting it at 1.7 because when you have your first budget hearing in September, you'll at that point set your budget millage rate. And also remember that the first week of August, we'll sit down with all 8 of you and go through our proposed budget. And it will probably be balanced at 1.5. And if at that time you feel like there's things that you want in the budget, then we will either find a way to fit it in by reducing the budget in other areas, or we will raise the limit to somewhere between 1.5 and that 1.7 that you would approve today. So and then we also have a budget workshop that I believe is going to be scheduled for August the 8th, the second Monday of August. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities to kind of vet this through and see where we kind of settle out on the millage rate and what we do with all those projects that you're mentioning now, and we'll be able to discuss that.
That'd be great, and I know Mr. Campbell is having a conversation, but I'd like to request, Mr. Campbell?
Excuse me, ma'am. Mr. Campbell will be able to bring at the next meeting a list of all of the infrastructure projects currently that need to be done in the city with the corresponding estimated costs.
Great, and I would assume almost like a triage. Are they done, critical need? Perfect, thank you.
Councilmember Braden?
I'm good, Mayor, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Dixon?
Yes, I just wanted to ask, have you looked at the money that's going to be carried forward? Because I know that, give you an example, we had put $300,000 into a sidewalk project that was going on Calhoun Avenue. So have we looked at the money that we will carry forward from this present budget? There's no way we're going to get that done before the next budget. So have we looked at that?
It's hard to tell specifically how much we might carry forward because the summer is the time we spend a lot of money. We got a lot of recreation stuff. We got a lot of construction things going on. We usually do have a carryover amount, but nothing that I could really guess at. Maybe 3 to 4% of our total budget. So several $100,000 or more, probably.
Okay, just in that one project, it was 300, so, you know.
Yeah, but David likes to spend money in other places when he finds it, so.
Okay, well, I'd kind of like to know the projects that we've basically allocated for in the present budget, and what of those projects will not be done this year. That way we can either reallocate them or change them up or whatever it may be. So I kind of like to know what projects we've allocated money for that will not be done by October 1st, if we can, please.
That's pretty easy. We can get that for you.
All right, thank you.
Any further comments, questions?
Actually, I do have a question. Do you know if we have any outstanding impact fees that are due from projects that are being developed?
Nothing that I know of. I mean, they typically, once they get to a certain point in the application process, they have to pay that, so.
If there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. The vote is unanimous, yes. We have a report on the emergency maintenance dredging at Old Pass Lagoon Channel. Ms. Lejeune?
Yes, Mr. David Campbell is prepared to report on that and answer any questions from council.
We estimated that we had approximately 4,000 cubic yards of material to be dredged out in the mouth of the harbor. Once we were completed by contract, the contractor had to have a pre and post survey to determine how much sand was actually removed. There was approximately 5,283 cubic yards of sand removed from the mouth of the harbor, which was the original contract provided for 4,000 cubic yards. So the unit price that we were given for the dredge material was $12.50 a cubic yard. The excess came to $16,037.50. So based on the contract, we should consider paying the contractor the additional amount.
I'll make the recommended motion.
We have a motion to pay the contractor. Do we have a second?
I'll second it, Mayor.
Have a motion, second, discussion?
You want me to go ahead and read it into the record?
Yes, please.
I move that the city council authorize the city manager to execute a change order to the contract with Panhandle Machine and Supply for emergency dredging of Old Pass Lagoon Channel in the amount of $16,037.50 to fund the change order from the city's ending fund balance account and make the appropriate budget amendment.
I still concur with the second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Councilmember Braden?
Thank you, Mayor. That was estimated to be 3,000 to 4,000 cubic yards of sand material to be removed in Old Pass Lagoon. The contractor had 1,000 yards, 1,000 cubic yard of leeway either way. That's a lot. I mean, my thought is if it can't be that hard to go out there and say we're going to dredge from here to here to here to here to here. We're going so deep. I mean, I only have to go out there and I can get it closer than that, than 1,000 cubic yards. And then they come back and say, well, we've dredged more and we need $16,000 more dollars. To me, that's just the contractor's error, and I'm not willing to pay for his mistake. So that's it. I can't support it.
Mr. Campbell, how is that calculated? Is that by the company? Do they calculate the estimate that needs to be dredged?
It's a surveyor. It's a certified survey from a professional surveyor.
Is that
Not
standard?
associated with the dredging company?
No, it was in the dredging company's contract to hire a surveyor. And they hired Buchanan and Harper out of Panama City.
In our dredging projects in the past, how often do they go over and come back with a,
It's
change
not
order.
uncommon. It's not uncommon. A lot of it is based on our initial estimate of the sand that we thought was in there. We took a survey that was done in January, and then I sent out a member of our staff to try to obtain additional field data. And we combined both of that data, and based on my calculations, I determined that it was about between 3,000 and 4,000 cubic yards. And it was actually more when the contractor finished.
Can I get a copy of the last time we dredged that? Didn't they go out with a backhoe or something, excavator, dig that out? That last time it was dredged, or?
I believe, I don't believe I was here when they did that, but from speaking with Mr. Schmidt, I think they used a long reach excavator to.
I'd like to get a copy of that to see what they estimated, what we paid.
Okay.
Any change orders made to that project.
Sure.
Just so I can wrap my head around it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? And please signal me, I hit my button a little too quick for voting, so I'll have to see you visually. Any further discussion? I call for the vote. Six yes, one no. Assignment of agreement for professional engineering services for civil engineering design and construction services between the City of Destin and Preble Rish, Inc., National Fish and Wildlife Foundation Drainage Improvement. I understand this is a simple merger.
Yes, Mr. Campbell will give that report.
Last year, we hired Preble Rish as the design engineers for our stormwater projects throughout the city, the Gulf Environmental Benefit Fund grant projects. They've been working on the design of those projects since last year. In March, Dewberry bought Preble Rish. Dewberry's a larger firm based out of Fairfax, Virginia. The merger will not cause any of the folks that are currently working on the project to be changed. So we're still going to have the same staff that's familiar with the project, that's working on the project now. So this is a simple assignment based on the purchase of Preble Rish by Dewberry.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the recommended motion.
Would you read it, please?
Yes, I move that the council authorize the city manager to execute the letter request for the assignment of the agreement for professional engineering services for civil engineering, design, and construction services between the City of Destin and Preble Rish, Inc. to Dewberry Engineers, Inc., which will allow Dewberry Preble Rish to continue with the civil engineering design and permitting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion, second, discussion. There being no discussion, I call for the vote. We have a unanimous yes. No parking signage on Crystal Beach. Do we need to read title on that, Mr. Miller? Mr. Miller? Excuse me, do you need to read title on the Crystal Beach signage?
No, sir, this is to give direction.
Okay.
If I may, Mayor, just to give a little bit of background on this, when I first arrived, the end of May, one of the most prevalent issues that we heard from our citizens was regarding the parking problems that they were having down at Crystal Beach. Staff then put together a very preliminary report for me regarding signage, what type of signage we would need, how much that would cost, and where those signs should be placed based upon Florida state statute. At the June 6 regular city council meeting, we brought this information forward, and staff was then asked to look into other municipal ordinances that may be applicable to the parking and right-of-way issues in the Crystal Beach neighborhood, and specifically to look at how other cities dealt with towing from right-of-ways. I asked Mr. David Campbell to do that research, and he has put together an excellent staff report, and I would like to hand it over to Mr. Campbell at this point to go through the report with the council. What we are looking for at the end of this is an idea from council of which of these tools that they would like to see, so that we can then formulate an ordinance to be brought back at a near future meeting.
I looked at several, pardon?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I looked at several municipalities throughout the state and chose the three that I have here because they had a slightly different twist on how they treated towing of vehicles in the right-of-way. Most of the municipalities obviously have trespass towing ordinances, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're actually talking about parking and towing of vehicles in a public right-of-way, specifically in a residential area. So the way our current ordinance reads, obviously you can't park in prohibited areas by signage. Our ordinance also says that law enforcement officers or parking enforcement specialists may issue citations, and it reads that we can only tow if it's a safety hazard or a liability to the city. So it's very difficult to tow the vehicles here in the public rights of way. Now Orlando, they have similar language, and a lot of these cities generally follow Chapter 316 of the Florida statutes. The difference here in Orlando, they allow for prohibited parking at all times on certain streets within the city. You still have to have the streets signed properly according to law. They don't make any provision in Orlando, or excuse me, that's Tampa. But so you can in Orlando you can take entire streets, designate those areas as non-parking, as long as it's signed. In Tampa, all the similar language in their ordinance. They do have a provision in their ordinance for parking in front of residential homes is limited to 5 minutes, and that's predicated on the owner or the lessee of the residence actually placing a sign in the front yard that says no parking. The other twist here is that no provisions for towing in the residential areas in the public right-of-way were in Tampa, only citation. In Gainesville, you can't park in the public right-of-way, and I thought this was interesting, without the permission of the owner. And towing is allowed for any of the violations of the parking ordinance. And let me revisit Tampa just briefly. They had another interesting provision in that in certain residential districts, parking by permit only. So the way that works is that if you're in a residential district, in this designated residential district, you can get a permit from the city and place it on your vehicle to park in the right-of-way. If you don't have a driveway, you can apply for 2 permits. And actually, you can apply for up to 3 permits, 1 for guest parking. And you can apply for temporary guest parking in the right-of-way by permit only. And obviously, that would be relatively extensive when it comes to you're hiring someone that would actually monitor that type of activity. If you're in a, if we're limiting this to a certain area of the city, obviously, not the entire city, would be less cumbersome on your staff, if the smaller the district, actually. So, I guess based on my research, the 3 options here were you can designate entire streets at a time as no parking, as long as they're properly signed. You can allow, as in Tampa, you can allow the property owner to place a sign in their front yard, which is enforceable by the city and by law enforcement agents. In Tampa in particular, they're not towing, but the ordinance can be written in a manner that you would be able to tow, if that's the case. Also in Tampa, they have parking districts with permit only. And then in Gainesville, I guess the twist here was that it's totally enforceable to tow a vehicle if you don't have the permission of the property owner or the lessee to park in front of your resident. And be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
As staff is looking for direction, if council has no objection, I thought I might just go down the dais and ask each council member to comment or state what they would like to see in the ordinance. You want to object to that? We can try it once. If you don't like it, you can toss me. Councilmember Morgan, you can start us off.
Thank you, Mayor. So essentially, towing is, there is no municipality that you studied that tows cars for being in the right-of-way. Gainesville is the only one that does it, barring a safety hazard.
When you have a fairly strong towing ordinance, you're going to want to sign it properly to give the code enforcer or law enforcement agent, something to go on. If you went strictly by a no parking towing, you would have to put that on your sign, and you would have to have an incredible amount of signs.
Yeah, sure.
What I thought was interesting was that certain municipalities here allowed for entire streets, and the way the wording was in that ordinance was you can sign it at the beginning of the street and sign it at the end of the street and sign it in the middle of the street.
Yeah, I saw that.
And they also made provisions for entire districts, signing entire districts. Not sure how that would work with law enforcement. To sign somewhere like Crystal Beach, you have, probably a handful of entrances into Crystal Beach, probably 5 streets. But it would make sense to me that you would have to have interior signage as well if you chose to sign a district. The other thing that I think we have to worry about if we were to designate entire streets or entire districts was the fact that if folks wanted to have, let's say, their family over for Christmas and their kids came,
sure,
and they happened to fill up the right-of-way in front of the house, then if we had an ordinance that read no parking in the right-of-way, then that would create a problem.
Yeah, I think, my biggest concern is making sure we do something that truly dissuades people from parking in the right-of-way, because it has, at least from the citizens in Crystal Beach I've heard from, it's a quality of life issue.
Sure.
And it's a real problem, and I'm afraid, towing on demand, that is extreme.
The good thing about Crystal Beach, certain areas in Crystal Beach, is they do have, on some of the streets, Shira Street, they have large driveways.
Sure.
Able to park, 4 or 5 vehicles.
And one more thing, one of the best ways to combat, parking all around the Crystal Beach homeowners, they pay millions of dollars to full-time residents, $1 million for a house, and people are parking all around it and ruining your lawn, whatever. That's a quality of life issue. And then the other one that's really been addressed to us are these big party houses and who are irresponsibly permitted with 3-4 spots, and they're sleeping 4 families that drive 2 cars apiece. So, I was hoping that this change would kind of nip both in the bud and solve it. Do you think that there is an alternative that will reach a peaceable solution?
I couldn't find any different ordinances other than these 3. I didn't look at every single one of them, but these are the ones that are quite different. They treat it in a different manner. The large houses, I know there's several already built, and there's several being permitted. That could be addressed in the actual parking requirements in the future, based on sleeping spaces.
Sure, but the idea behind towing the vehicles was these people who are getting 36 people, however many to stay in a home. The people renting it out would be a lot more diligent about warning the people coming down, hey, do not bring more than 4 cars.
Right.
And so that would alleviate some of the congestion and the problems that are associated with these big houses. And to my knowledge, towing these cars would be the best way to accomplish that. And aside from towing, I'm not sure what else would have that kind of effect of don't bring 12 cars for one house, because it's just not a good thing to do.
Right. Some of the other language in there wasn't towing, was actually incapacitating the vehicle, booting the vehicle, would be another method.
And we could write into the ordinance whichever method the council deems appropriate, whether it's to tow or to boot. The important thing here is, how do we sign it? Because whatever we do, there has to be signage, and Mr. Campbell has given a few alternatives of how that signage can be placed in the neighborhood. So that's what we're looking for. How would you like the cars to be dealt with, towed, booted, and what type of signage would you prefer to see in the neighborhood?
Okay. Yeah, for the sake of the quality of life on the people and the full-time residents on Crystal Beach, we need to do something, and I'm kind of at a standstill here on what exactly to do, but thanks.
Mm-hmm. Councilmember Destin.
Thank you, Mayor. I lived in Tampa, and I got my fair share of parking tickets when I lived there. I'll admit that. They were civil citations, and I paid all of them. Do we have any data, any numbers? I know this is on the spot, but what is the compliance rate for civil citations? Does anybody really know? I'm seeing some eyebrows in the back, because I paid them, but I don't know if in general people just toss them and crumple them up, and because I think we're probably going to have a lot of out-of-town folks who are just going to crumple them, and I don't know, because I'm on the fence with regards to how far, if I want my first choice to be going to the extreme of towing these folks, because I do understand there's a balance that has to be played. we're not wanting to tow the Joneses family when they have Christmas, and we don't really want to just completely mangle up somebody's visit to Destin when we don't necessarily have to. If there's a less onerous means, I'd like to try to explore it. But if somebody could gather me that information, does it exist? If it doesn't, okay. But I'm interested in perhaps exploring some sort of hybrid between designating these tow-away zones and then civil citations, because I don't see how we're really going to get a whole lot of revenue out of this if we're just towing folks either. I'm a bit back and forth on how serious I want to be about towing these folks. So that doesn't give a whole lot of direction. I apologize, but that's kind of where I'm at for right now.
Councilmember Marler?
Thank you, Mayor. Having experience with no parking signs, they don't read them. Number one, you can put a 4x8 sign that says no parking, and I guarantee you somebody's going to park there because they say it's not me. One of the thoughts that comes to me is that as close to the sidewalk and/or the road as possible to plant the signs, and plant them literally almost 2 to 3 feet all the way down, which then we have a sea of signs. That's one of the things I see, because that's the only way, because somebody will squeeze in there unless you put it as close as possible as we can to the road itself. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we have a towing ordinance that if we did allow towing, the vehicle has to be within the city, towed to a yard within the city limits, or not more than a few miles from that, if I recall, when we did, because I remember doing that. And the other problem that I see, and that's the contention with me, is from the road to the property line, if it's a driveway, it's still right-of-way, and inevitably people are going to park saying it's my driveway, but then they're blocking the sidewalk itself, because I see that all the time, in my neighborhood in Kelly. So it's going to be very hard to see how we're going to craft something that, first off, we're going to have teeth to enforce, because it's going to be very difficult. Like I said, if we tow, we have to look at our ordinance on towing and see what we put in there. And as I said, I just don't think, unless we space the signs just a few feet apart, if we're going to use the standard rectangular sign, or if we wall it with billboard signs. But then I think the residents are going to be more unhappy with the view that they're going to see other than the cars. That's my thoughts, Mayor.
Thank you. With the turnover of the tourist population, I'm not too sure how effective you can be without towing. So my preference is to find some method that includes towing. Crystal Beach, there's a lot of entrances and exits. Somehow or another, I think we're going to have signage on the roads, not just at the entrance, but some form there. Now, maybe on Holiday Isle, a single large sign coming in at the entrance, because there's only one way in and one way out. So as you look at different areas, I think right now we're only considering in Crystal Beach and Holiday Isle. But if this was expanded, I think you have to look at each neighborhood, each section, and try to make a determination, because I do think we have to at least make an effort to fairly warn people that their vehicle is going to be towed clearly. And I don't want to sneak up on anyone and surprise them. They may choose to ignore the signs, but there's not much you can do about that.
Mayor, may I ask one more question of staff? My memory, I haven't had a parking ticket from Tampa in about 10 years now, but I do remember that some areas didn't have signage. What they did was they painted the curb a different color, which would alert, it was a yellow, I believe. Yeah, and you knew that if you were parking in front of a yellow curb, that was going to be the problem. You didn't have a sea of signs to where you would try, if you were trying to sneak around and you would park in between them, or where the sign stopped. If you knew you had a yellow curb and you were in front of it, you were in trouble. Is that something that is still available to us?
Typically, that's a raised curb, and very few raised curbs in Crystal Beach or Holiday Isle, mostly flat curb.
What about painting the street, the edge of the road, actually, instead of the curb.
Oh, you could paint the flat curb yellow, and I really can't speak to that. I've only seen raised curb, let me put it that way. I don't know if it's the same effect if you paint a flat curb yellow. It seems that it would be, but I can't answer that for sure.
I'm afraid painting a curb doesn't give an explanation of why it's painted yellow. Too much of the areas we're talking about presently, the vehicles are driving all the way past the curbs onto the grass and are not really parking on the street, which would be a more conventional and easier way to paint a curb and have a no parking area. Councilmember Foreman?
I've got the answer. I know one thing. If we don't take some action, then we're still not going to solve some of the problems we've got. And that means we've got to make a decision of some kind. I've looked at Gainesville. I've gone through the different cities that you've got on here. No parking where prohibited by proper signage. I don't have any problem with that. No parking on public right-of-way or private lawn without permission of the owner. That's a little bit fuzzy, but I could live with that, because then they wouldn't take advantage of the family on Christmas. Law enforcement officer or parking enforcement specialist may issue citations. A citation is the normal way of citing a no parking violation. And then the ultimate, of course, the nuclear option is towing for violation of the parking ordinance. And so I guess where I'm coming from is unless we take some action on this, we may as well not take any action, which is what I'm hearing. And I think at some point in time, we either take control of the parking in the city, or we're going to lose it even worse. So I sort of favor of the ones that you've got here. You could probably have some combination, but I think you've got to put up a proper sign, prohibited parking. You got to have some option for parking on the right-of-way, either a permit or something, if that's possible. And then you got to have a person who's qualified to issue a citation. And then if we're having a serious problem despite that, and we know that we've got a serious problem, then we may involve towing. That's it.
Councilmember Dixon?
Yes, thank you. I kind of like the Gainesville model as well. The one thing that I will say on the second bullet point there is that the parking on the private lawns, I'm really not crazy about that. I think we've kind of already got something on the books that says they're really not supposed to be parking on lawns and stuff. So I'm kind of not with that portion of it. And the towing of the vehicles, I just say this, that without the teeth in it and without the fact that the people think or would be concerned about the fact that somebody would tow their vehicle, would make them abide by the law. You don't have to tow that many before the word really, really gets out. So I don't have too much of a problem with the towing, but I'd kind of like to see something to soften that up a little bit. And the fact that first they would be given a citation, and then after a certain amount of time, if they have not moved the vehicle, then it would be eligible to tow. So I'm not for just straight up going down the road and towing every vehicle we can. I would like to see it where they are issued a citation, and if they don't take corrective action, then from that point, they could be towed in the extreme cases. So that's my opinion. I kind of like the Gainesville model with a couple of changes.
Councilmember Ramsell?
Thank you, Mayor. I also like the Gainesville model. I am for making an impact. I mean, I heard someone mention earlier that the concern about drawing revenue, and I'm not worried about the revenue. I'm worried about increasing the quality of life for our year-round residents. So I'd say make an impact. They're going to wad up and throw away a parking ticket because they're here for a week and they may never be back. Of course, we want them back, but I like the idea of, especially here, no parking, stopping, standing on the public right-of-way or a private lawn. I would remove the without the permission of the owner and just leave it as no parking on public right-of-way or lawn. I think it's too difficult to monitor, enforce, and research whether you have permission from the owner or not. I mean, that's, oh, I have permission from the owner. Well, then are you going to put that officer or whoever to the task of trying to reach the owner and confirm? No. So I think you kind of run into a whole different set of issues. The same with the permit only. I think that is going to be too labor and task intensive for someone to have to try to do here at the city. I like the idea of signing an entire street or an entire neighborhood, if we can do that. Maybe even the addition of the yellow striping, if that's helpful, because I agree with someone else who said that earlier. I don't want to see signs in front of everybody's house, and then what's to prevent someone from putting it out front their house, then they go and park next door. We're sort of running into the same problem again. What was my other point? I like the idea of a roving tow truck, if maybe we could contract and put the onus on them. I don't know the possibilities of that and contracting. I mean, how does that work? When we do get to a point where we're putting signage, however we place it and agree to do it, who, do we contract with the tow truck? Explain that to me.
You would, typically you would have tow facilities that are in the vicinity be on a rotation. And I believe that's how the sheriff's office does it. Are you guys on a rotation with tow?
That's for non-consensual things or
Okay.
Okay. David, I think the question is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we can basically just have tow trucks to kind of canvass the
Correct.
area and pull out those cars that are in violation. Had you seen anything along those lines?
I have not. Typically, when you're under contract with a towing company, it's for private property towing, trespass towing. I didn't see anything as far as right-of-way towing is concerned.
I've seen that somewhere, so I know it is done. It may be in a larger, it may be in Houston, but I would like to see if you could look into that. But how else is that achieved? I mean, is now the onus put back on the owner or a neighbor to call someone and say, well, we've got another car parked outside? That's what I want to get away from. I want them to be able to live their life and not have to worry about people parking everywhere and having to hunt people down to try to get something done.
We can certainly look into that on what method that we prefer to use for towing companies, and obviously we can't. We have to be fair to all the towing companies in the area, so I'll
Sure.
look in how to do that.
Okay, and those are my thoughts. I prefer a strict impactful method.
If we have no further discussion, I'm sorry, Councilmember Braden, I forgot you again.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I don't know what the answer is going to be because, I mean, I can't imagine Crystal Beach wanting a sign, basically almost every 50 feet down through there, no towing. And that's got to be the answer, though, is to tow them because according to Mr. Destin's testimony earlier, signage, no parking doesn't work. Painting the curb yellow doesn't work. So, but that, I mean, to me, that's the only answer is towing them. But how are you going to accomplish that without having a sign on every corner and up and down the street is beyond me. But if I had one to pick, it'd be the Gainesville. That's my 2 cents. Thank you, Mayor.
Have enough direction?
Yes, sir. Just to kind of reiterate, it seems like there is a leaning towards the Gainesville model. We're also looking at a hybrid of civil citations and towing that maybe is progressive in action. There was some leaning towards maybe signing the ends of the street only and somehow indicating that all of that street is no parking, perhaps with a yellow line between the two signs or something along those lines. But not to go the way of permitting for individual cars. So unless there's something else that kind of, jumps out at you, we'll take that information and try to modify the existing parking ordinance and then bring that back at a near future meeting for review.
Excellent. If no further discussion, we're going to take a 10-minute break. We'll reconvene at 10 till. and gentlemen, would you please find your seats? Don't hurry.
No, I'm talking about over in Fraser, and we have one garbage service back in the 60s and 70s, and that's where we dumped the stuff right there at the corner of Calhoun and Cyber.
What was the old Main Street dump?
Wasn't one, unless it was out there on the county. Oh, well, that was back there.
Wasn't that the old dump?
No, there was one of the Kelly family area, but that was way back in the early.
Mr. Destin, are you in charge of Morgan tonight? What happened to him? I was just kidding. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll please find your seats. Council members find their seats. We have the first reading of ordinance 16-16-CN, Waste Management, Inc., franchise extension. Mr. Miller, would you read by title?
Yes, Mayor. Ordinance 16-16-CN by title is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Destin, Florida, relating to the collection and disposal of trash, garbage, and other refuse. Amending Ordinance 11-04-CN, the exclusive franchise to Waste Management, Inc. of Florida, a private corporation, for the collection and disposal of all residential and commercial trash, garbage, and other refuse within the city limits. As such, has been previously amended by Ordinance 11-24-CN, providing findings, amending Section 4, term to extend the same by 12 months, amending Section 19, recycling program to provide for certain reporting, amending Section 29, rates and charges to provide that grantee is responsible for billing and collections, amending Section 31, delinquent accounts to provide new procedures for handling of delinquent residential accounts, providing for modification of contract, providing for entirety, providing a savings clause, and providing for an effective date. The ordinance is before you for consideration on first reading.
Ms. Lejeune, tell us about it.
Yes, sir. The waste management contract, it was pretty much in the process of going through a renewal when I came on board, and I wanted the opportunity to look closely at this particular contract. The council had, in their visioning session, talked about sustainable practices, specifically commercial recycling, and this is something that we need to look at a little bit more closely. Also, with this one-year extension, we're pretty much relieved from the bill collection process, which was one of the things we wanted to make sure that we have in the actual final contract. So with a one-year extension and the bill collection process being taken away from the city at this time, that'll give us an opportunity to put out an RFP with a new scope of work. The RFP that was going out was 10 years old, and I think that we needed to take a look at that before we put it out on the street.
Do I have a motion for adoption?
I'll make the motion if I can figure out what page it's on. Ugh. Thank you. I move that ordinance number 16-16-CN be approved on first reading and scheduled for second and final adoption.
Second?
Second.
I have a motion, second, discussion? Being no discussion, I call for the vote. Have a unanimous yes. First reading of ordinance 16-17-CN, Gulf Power Franchise Extension. Mr. Miller, would you read by title?
Yes, Mayor. Ordinance 16-17CN by title is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Destin, Florida, relating to electric utility franchise, amending Ordinance 048, the franchise to Gulf Power Company, a private corporation, for the provision of electric utility services within the city limits, as such has been previously amended by Ordinance number 048.1 and 02-01CN, providing findings, providing amending Section 5, term of franchise, right to purchase to extend the time by 2 years, providing for modification of contract, providing for entirety, providing a savings clause, and providing for an effective date. The ordinance is before you for consideration on first reading.
Ms. Lejeune, explanation?
Yes, sir. This particular extension was negotiated and executed on May 19th of this year. This is a formality. It needed to come to council for adoption through ordinance. It's a 2-year contract, and we will be working with Gulf Power within that time frame to negotiate a new contract.
Councilmember Braden?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make the recommended motion. I move that the ordinance number 16-17-CN be approved on first reading and scheduled for second and final adoption.
Second.
I have a motion, second, discussion?
Mayor, if I may
Yes, sir.
report for the record, I've made the change in the ordinance to reflect the approval tonight in July. We had expected first reading would be in August, and that date had been inserted, but that correction is made. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have the motion and second as corrected. Discussion? If there's no discussion, I call for the vote. We have a unanimous yes vote.
Mayor, I'd like to point out and thank the fact that the Gulf Power representative is actually here tonight, which speaks a lot. So thank you for coming out tonight.
So was somebody from...
Is Waste Management
Waste
here as
Management
well?
was here as well.
Fantastic, that's great.
Thank you all for attending. Ms. Lejeune? Oh, excuse me, yeah. Yes, Ms. Lejeune, comments?
Yes, sir. I have brought forward an information update asking for a motion to proceed with Royal Melvin Heritage Park project. Since our last discussion regarding securing the park, there has been additional information that has come to staff and then my attention. I have asked our grants manager, Ms. Lindy Shabbat, to do a brief presentation regarding the status of the park and especially the status of the grants that we're going to use to build that park. After Ms. Shabbat's presentation, then I would like to have Mr. Scott Shirley speak on the letter we received from the Florida Community Trust as far as the negotiated site plan that the mayor has been assigned by council to work on. So if I could have Ms. Shabbat please begin her presentation.
Next Thursday, on July 28th, the Okaloosa County Restore Act consultant, Matrix Corporation, will meet with all project sponsors to outline the implementation schedule of their projects. I thought tonight it would be enlightening to show you some of what we showed the ORAC committee last year that made them select our project out of nearly 50 others and to fund it for $1.25 million. So here's a recap of the story we told them. It began 14 years ago, back in 2002, with the creation of the Destin Harbor District Community Redevelopment Agency, the CRA, the purpose of which is to redevelop and showcase our county's unique charter fishing boat industry, its fleet, its docks, and its seafood. The first CRA project was the reconstruction of Mountain Drive in 2009, a prime business district in dire need of an uplift and the easiest project of jumpstart redevelopment. Mountain Drive went from looking like this to this. While planning and constructing Mountain Drive, the city was working nonstop with property owners along the harbor to create a public-private partnership to construct the first phase of the long-envisioned harbor boardwalk. That project became a reality in 2012 at a cost to the CRA of $2.4 million. A transformation from this to this. Always with an eye on the next key piece of the puzzle, the city in the meantime was looking for a piece of property along the center of the harbor to serve as the public gateway and a sight corridor from US 98 to the fishing boats and boardwalk. In 2006, at the height of the economic boom, the city received partial funding from the Florida Communities Trust to reimburse the Trust for Public Land for the purchase of 206 Harbor Boulevard at a total cost of $4.6 million. Soon after our closing, the city cleared the property of structures, impervious surfaces, and invasive exotic vegetation. The next piece of the puzzle was to make all of this work was public parking. So the city purchased the property at the corner of Marlar Street and Harbor Boulevard, US 98, slightly northeast of the park entrance in 2009. Over the next few years, we demolished the old structures, cleared the site, and created an attractive public parking area in the heart of Destin for $3.5 million. The long-range vision for this parking lot is to construct a parking garage. So in a decade's time, the city of Destin invested over $14 million in its unique harbor district to stimulate economic growth and remain competitive with other resort communities. The last key to unlocking the full potential of all this hard work and investment is the construction of the Captain Royal Melvin Heritage Park and Plaza, the gateway to the state's largest charter fishing fleet and what separates our coastal community from any other. And then the economic downturn brought all our progress to a standstill. Until the Okaloosa County Restore Act funds were made available, the city had no way to acquire the funds to construct the park. Two of the prime criteria for funding under the Restore Act are promotion of tourism in the Gulf Coast region, including recreational fishing, and the promotion of the consumption of seafood harvested from the Gulf Coast region. Funding through the Restore Act for the creation of the Heritage Park Gateway to the Harbor Boardwalk is the one opportunity that will do exactly that. It is the only funding opportunity that we will ever have to build this park, and the money is on its way this year. Here is a current conceptual of the park design. Final design plans are at 66% and can be completed in just a few months' time if told to proceed now. Main features include a terraced walkway from US 98 to the boardwalk, a plaza area for public events, a harbor and wildlife observation area, educational signage and displays highlighting Destin's fishing history, a kayak canoe lift, picnic pavilion, and restrooms. The value of a public gateway to a regional special feature such as our working fishing docks cannot be underestimated. You just need to look at the overwhelming success of other cities that have renovated their riverfronts to draw visitors and dollars to their area. We believe, and we hope you do too, that our gateway and our harbor front can and will outshine them all. This is the vision the city has worked on for 14 years, and the money to build this park is here, it's coming, and we have heard from the Restore Act Committee. On July 28th, city staff will meet with ORAC consultant to verify our timeline for construction. I can guarantee council that the ORAC will not hold the money for this park if we cannot begin construction by April 2017. There is only this one pot of money for individual counties. At one point, they had said there would be several pots of money. They took that back. There is only one, and we have right now have $1.25 million of that for this project. But there are many other worthy and shovel-ready projects that were in the queue to be awarded that the county can and will fund in place of Heritage Park and Plaza if we are not ready to build by next spring. On July 31st, I must submit the City of Destin's annual stewardship report to the Florida Communities Trust on this past year's progress towards implementation of our grant responsibilities. Tonight, I'm seeking council's direction on what to tell the FCT regarding the next steps. And as grants manager, it is my responsibility to spell out some very real consequences. The city will lose $1.25 million in grant funding if we do not proceed with the existing park plans. This is a once-in-a-lifetime grant opportunity. Most park grants cap at $500,000, and they require a 50% match. We will never build the park we envision if we do not lock in now our ORAC funding. The city is also at risk of losing the Florida Communities Trust grant of $2.7 million. We have done nothing to proceed on the park implementation for 10 years. If we have to return the money, we'd have to borrow it to do so. The city does not have $2.7 million unless we give up acquiring the cement plant at Joe's Bayou, which is something else the city certainly would profit from. I think most damaging of all might be the loss of Destin's reputation and loss of trust from the state. It will be a very long time before the city of Destin is awarded a grant from any state agency if we renege on the FCT grant. So there's good news and bad news there, and I see real possibilities that I hope we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Shabbat. Mr. Shirley, I know that we recently received a letter from the FCT staff. It had been made available to all the council members. Could you summarize that letter for us, please?
Yes, as you all know, we met with the Florida Communities Trust staff, and they're staffed by employees of the Department of Environmental Protection. Met with them on June 14th. Mayor and myself were at the meeting. Mr. Destin was there. The Destins both were there, and also Ms. Minshew was there. We pitched the entire proposal. That meeting seemed to go pretty well. We have been waiting for something in writing back from DEP for some time. And on I guess Friday, we did receive that. Just to summarize very quickly, I'll just quote from the letter, third paragraph. FCT staff has concerns regarding the logistics and feasibility of the proposal. And it goes on to talk, first of all, about the requirements of Rule 62-818-0161. And the rule is really a two-part rule. There's the first part is 5 different criteria that have to be satisfied as a threshold matter. If those 5 criteria can be satisfied, that is what our preliminary proposal was directed to. Then you go on to satisfy the remainder of the criteria and gather up the information necessary to conclude the transaction. Of those 5 criteria, in particular, 62-818-016 subsection 1B speaks to the need for the square footage of the amount exchanged being equivalent to or greater, or the amount that is gained from the exchange being equivalent to or greater than the amount that is given by the governmental entity. FCT disclosed at the meeting that they have recommended a 2-to-1 ratio. In other words, they get two times as much coming into the governmental parcel as is exchanged out, and that the board, that is the FCT board, previously required a 3-to-1 ratio. So there's no guarantee that in the estimation of staff that a 1.4-to-1 ratio, which is what the city is proposing, would get the support of the Board of Trustees. And then the other criteria in that section is all pretty much to be determined, because it's not possible to tell whether or not that essential threshold criteria regarding the acreage matching up or the area matching up will be satisfied. Then there's some more systemic issues having to do with the proposal. One has to do with the vote that requires a 75% support of the governing body. It was my position advanced at the meeting that it's 75% of those that are able to vote on the measure, and DEP staff is taking the position that it's 75% of the entire composition of the governing body. So that is set out at the bottom of page 2 of the letter. There's a concern that the riparian amenities, that is the dock improvements that would be a part of the proposal, may not be approved as currently proposed. It would be obviously a lot better if those were in existence now. That would be a more finite known matter. Probably the biggest concern, though, has to do with the nature of the exchange being in perpetual non-exclusive easements, and the concern for the agency that those easements don't reflect interest in property as to which the restrictive covenants that are required to be placed on these parcels, or any parcels that come into the functionality of the park, those all have to have declarations of restrictive covenants placed on them, and there is a concern that simply would not work with a non-exclusive easement where a private party was retaining a right of private use over an area that supposedly is being restricted to conservation and recreation and preservation type uses. So there are a number of other concerns too that have to do with the next phase of the project, which would be satisfying the remaining criteria, and there's some pretty tough questions that they've asked. And so realistically speaking, I've done a lot of state permitting. I've been in some long, complex proceedings. This is really not a whole lot different than a complicated state permitting proceeding. I think here, realistically, we're probably looking at a year to attempt to get this finished. And even if we took the time to do that, and even if we ran down all the rabbit trails that they've mapped out for us to run down here, there is no guarantee that it would be approved by the board. So that is where the EP staff is. We requested that they put it in writing so we would have something to report on to the city council.
Thank you, Mr. Shirley. On behalf of staff, we feel that if we are not able to commence immediately with the original park project, we are at serious risk of never being able to build that park because the grants will go away, and then we will be held responsible for paying back $2.1 million, $2.7 million, which we don't conceivably have in this budget unless, as Ms. Shabbat mentioned, we forego purchasing the cement plant. And that's the end of our staff report.
Question on the covenants. In addition, in lieu of asking for their money back, doesn't it also state they can just take the whole park?
Yeah, the primary remedy as provided for in the restrictive covenants is that the parcel that is purchased with the state funds is simply, in essence, reverts or transfers to the state, into state ownership. So that is the primary remedy, although we have for practical reasons assumed that they would take a refund of the funds if it was offered.
Thank you. Excellent report. Councilmember Braden, do you mind if I go to public input first? Got it. Lisa Minshew, would you like to speak first?
Mr. Mayor, I think I'm going to let Mr. Destin go first, if that's okay.
Okay.
Well, thanks once again for this opportunity to speak to you fellows on this issue. We received the trust letter at 3:20 p.m. on Friday. We expected that they would give us some criteria and some questions, and they did. And in fact, though, we met 4 of the 5 criteria by their own testimony, 2 outright. The other 2 they said they didn't think would be questionable. And on the 5th one, which was the trade on the square feet, we met it even when they took out 6,692 square feet of right-of-way that we were giving through our parking lot to give access down to the waterfront. There was a number of questions raised about the construction of the dock. That there was an issue with with the riparian setback on our neighbors to the west. In fact, the proposed dock does not intrude into the 25-foot setback on Wendy and Tim Krieg's property at all. But we had an interesting suggestion from one of the trust staff members when we went over there in June. They suggested that we should just give the eastern side of the existing dock to the city. Then there would be no permits or no new construction needed at all, and no dredging was ever anticipated. They thought that was a better alternative because they didn't want to see a lot more construction in the harbor. We indicated that if that's what the trust desired, we'd be happy to do that. The question about whether or not we had to go through any more permitting on the parking. In fact, since we're turning 3 of our slips that were rented into transient slips, that actually reduces the amount of parking required on site by 11 spaces, which means there's no question about the parking or going through any kind of route, any kind of new review by the planning and zoning. On the existing road is a 12-foot road. The one that's proposed in our mediated settlement was 12 feet. So there's no change on that, so that would not be subject to review also. Leaving the road actually saves a large live oak that's located on our property because the root system would be under the road. The proposed plan that you have in front of you and that was approved earlier would put the retaining wall right up against our property line and would necessitate the cutting of the roots of that big tree, and that would kill it. By leaving the road in place, that would give at least 12 feet of that root system protection. In closing, I just want to point out that we have now spent over a year in time and mediation, 3 mediation sessions, $30,000 plus, trying to give the city $1.5 million worth of amenities. A city dock, which you will not get another chance to get. Guaranteed vehicular access down to the harbor boardwalk to maintain and upkeep the only dedicated access you'll have. Otherwise, you will have to make access down through the middle of the park, which the DEP thinks needs to be protected environmentally. We also would provide handicap parking and a handicap boat ramp. All of this in exchange for the use of an easement that has been in existence and use for over 50 years. Our offer still stands. However, we suggest that you have a number of issues to address besides this road on your grant with the trust. While we were meeting with them in June, they wanted to know where the fishing museum was going to be on site. They couldn't see it. If you'll look at the criteria and the point system that we use to meet the grant, they talk about the fishing museum or a cultural center. It in fact requires classes in said cultural center 12 times a year. I don't know how you guys are going to fix that yet, but you need to figure out some way to address that with the trust because they think they're getting a fishing museum. The other problem that you have is the plan you have in front of you now is around 60%. It calls for the reduction of the bluff by 8 or 10 feet in places. You have not come up with the other 40% design. Until you do that, you really don't know what you're building. And you're going to impact some of the trees and kill them. We have one other issue that seemed to be quite important to the trust when we were over there, and that was the maintenance of their tax-exempt bonds. They said that it was very important that we not do anything on the site that would cause the tax-exempt bonds to be called into question. Well, I understand that we've been paying the fleet, our neighbor, for the use of the riparian slips that the city bought with bond money. That could very well cause a question about the tax-exempt status of the bonds. the city needs to address that issue very soon before it becomes something that we can't take back. I would strongly suggest that you ask for a refund on those funds and find out if that's legal for you to even be paying those funds. I would recommend that you call a special meeting to address these 2 or 3 issues. Until you do, I don't know how you can go forward. I understand you're being pressured by the county to have some kind of a plan for them to examine on July the 28th. I was on the ORAC Advisory Committee, and I had not heard of that, so I tried to check this morning on some of the other projects that were awarded grants to see if they'd been put on notice that they had to provide shovel-ready plans for review. None of them knew anything about it, so I better go back and tell a few of those guys that on the 28th they're supposed to be in front of the ORAC committee if that's in case the fact. Our offer still stands. I would recommend that you go on a parallel course so that you don't risk losing your money. You know, modify the existing plan that you have. Try to come to some consensus about what you're going to do with the cultural center, what you're going to do on the other things that you need to do to meet the requirements of the grant. At the same time, we will address the issues that we got in the letter on Friday afternoon at 3:20 and see if we can't address them where the trust will feel comfortable about going forward. But, you know, you guys need to have a special meeting, and you need to have it soon so you can address these issues. I'll be happy to ask any questions you may have.
Mayor? If I may, just to let you know, Mr. Destin, we have addressed the fishing museum cultural area. In a previous report that Ms. Shabbat made to the FCT, we did inform them that we were not going to be moving the fishing museum as it is right now to this property, but we have had discussions with Ms. Kathy Marler Blue, and they are willing to go into a collaborative partnership with the city to be able to put programming and movable displays there at the building, and the FCT was agreeable. And this was from, was it last year's report? Couple of years. We did inform them that the actual fishing museum was not going to be moved.
Well, all I could testify is the conversations that took place on the June 14th meeting, and they were still saying, where's the fishing museum?
Okay, well, we do have a letter that says that they accepted our alternative plan.
Thank you. My name is Lisa Minshew. Mr. Destin covered most of the points I wanted to cover, so I'll try to be brief. You know that we've been trying very, very hard to give you guys, to give the city all of these amenities. We went to Tallahassee, we met with them. They did talk a lot about the museum, so I don't know what, maybe they've lost your letter. But we didn't get this letter until Friday afternoon. And suddenly we're going to make a decision on this letter that just came a few days ago. I think that Mr. Destin is appropriately asking for the right type of meeting where all of these issues can be addressed. I also have done a lot of permitting with the state in my 32 years of practice, and I thought that I was going to hear that this is a pretty good letter, really, for the first blush. When you make a presentation to a state agency in very rough format, which is what we all did, to have a 3 or 4 page letter of comments is not bad at all. We feel like we can address all of these very easily, and I think that our proposal can still work with your program, and there isn't any reason for you to lose your grant money. I think that once again, you're having pressure from another party to try to kill it, and there's no reason to do that. There's no reason to give up $1.4 million of amenities from the BI company to accentuate the value of this park. So we feel like we can address these issues very easily, and we're prepared to do that, but we couldn't do it over the weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mary Ann Wines?
Hey, Mayor. Can I ask her one question before Miss Mary Ann Wines comes up, please? Just met you. If you believe that you have an easement, why are you willing to pay $1.5 million to the city for something that you believe you already have?
Because Mr. Destin has always invested heavily in this community, as you know. And he believes in the community and he believes in the park. And he has tried for the last several years to come to a compromise that benefits the citizens of the community. That's why he's willing to do that. The other alternative is I can do the lawyer thing and, we can easily start a lawsuit, take it in front of a jury and do that. But Mr. Destin wants to try to work this out. And so he has put on the table very valuable assets that only he can provide in order to make this work for everybody. I think it's admirable. So it's not really paying $1.4 million to have an easement. It's to try to make neighbors and community and citizens come together for the benefit of everybody.
But you're not paying, but you're giving up $1.5 million for something you already have.
Right.
I believe you have. I've never in my life heard of anybody willing to spend that kind of money for something they already have, just out of the kindness of their heart. I mean, I'd love to take it, and love to have the docks and all that. The thought just keeps running through my head, why anybody would give that kind of money or that kind of property to anybody for something they already have.
Well, we've been through several mediations. Obviously, I can't talk to you about what was said, but I can tell you that in mediations, people talk about the risk, the rewards, the ability to have finality so that you're not fighting with people. And there's a lot of benefit to come up with a solution that everybody can live with. The proposal that the Destins have made to the city does not cause detrimental effect to their business. It's a way to share their property with the community. And so it's not, like I said, it's not really paying $1.4 million to keep your easement. It's a way to resolve it so that everybody has the benefit.
If I might make one comment, Ms. Minshew, so
sure.
the motives are being questioned. If you'll recall, not too long ago, or maybe long ago now, Mattie Kelly gave $8 or $10 million to the Okaloosa Walton Junior College. Bernie Henderson gave Henderson Beach, he got paid, but he donated a bunch too. This is our opportunity, our last opportunity to have a city dock on the harbor. I would like to be able to give something to my community that is along the lines of the kind of donation those folks have made. It's up to you guys.
Mr. Destin reminds me all the time of trying to take my lawyer hat off, but I am here as a lawyer. And the alternative is that we will litigate it, and we've talked about that. And the litigation will not be over in a year. And so the best way to resolve it is to come up with a compromise that benefits everybody, to allow the park to proceed, to allow you to buy the cement factory, all of the things that are good for the community. Stop paying the lawyers. I'm good with that. Let us come up with this. We've come up with this resolution. When we were at the meeting with the state, I thought it went pretty well. I mean, we had good conversation with them. We've already done a lot of the surveying and engineering to see how this can all work together. A lot of good points were raised during that meeting because the city doesn't have any way to drive down to the property to maintain a bathroom. I mean, think about that. You're going to drive it down the one walkway to get down there to do maintenance. Those are things that Mr. Destin's providing you that you don't have right now. So we see it as a win-win for everybody, and we'd like to proceed on that path.
Mary Ann White?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. I'm Mary Ann Wines with the Destin Fish and Fleet Marina, 210 Harbor Boulevard, Destin. The fleet's attorney's out of town, so I'm here asking you to move forward with the construction of the Royal Melvin Heritage Park as promised. At your April 4th, 2016 meeting, you voted unanimously 5-0, less Jim Foreman, who was absent, and 1 abstention, to approve a land trade deal proposed by Dewey Destin for his company, BI Inc., to take a chunk of land out of the center of the city's park on the harbor to provide a driveway to his lower lot. The proposal that you approved, against the recommendation of those paid to protect the city, puts the council in conflict with the city staff because it violates the law in many areas. Setbacks, parking, landscape, bathrooms, stormwater, and 2-lane access, to name a few. By circumventing staff and going straight to the city council, the applicant was able to bypass the permitting process, which will at some point have to be addressed. In other words, for this to work, the city must for this to work as approved, the city must break the laws of the city and of the state. At your next meeting on April 18th, then City Manager Greg Casella asked to be excused from taking this proposal to the state for ethical reasons. No one asked him what the ethical concerns were. You voted unanimously to relieve him of the responsibility and give the job to the newly elected mayor. At the next meeting on May 2nd, however, the mayor had done his homework, figured out the obvious, and wrote you a letter addressing his concerns. He was verbally smacked down, and again, no one asked questions about the concerns. He requested permission to renegotiate the deal, but no action was taken, leaving the original deal on the table. So the mayor renegotiated the deal and took a rendering that could pass the DEP scrutiny, but not your land development code. He took the proposal to the state a few weeks ago, along with Dewey Destin and Lisa Minshew, and presented that proposal. Unfortunately, although the mayor's proposal remedied the length of the dock and whittled down the amount of encroachment of the setback, it still realistically violates the 25-foot setback on the Destin Fish and Fleet side, and possibly as well on the Krieg property. As we told the mayor when he presented it to us, we do not approve of it. So let's review the deal you approved. BI has promised you 3 boat slips for transient use. You already have 3 transient boat slips at the Destin Fish and Fleet Marina, larger for 50-foot boats, which are landlocked by his allowing mooring on his dock to for-hire boats in front of the city's slips illegally. In addition, the boat slips he is promising to the city will still encroach on the 25-foot required setback. Permitting at DEP should not allow them. Second, he proposes to give you 2 parking spaces on his lower lot where he has already been cited for insufficient parking. He already doesn't have enough parking for what he already has, but plans to build a longer dock for more boats and still no bathroom. As I understand it, his meeting with the magistrate has been postponed with no date certain in sight. Third, he offers an eyebrow-raising easement the entire length of his own driveway to the 2 parking spaces. It's so transparent that it bears no further discussion. Finally, he offers you the easement across his boardwalk, the same one that you already have his promise in writing to give you as a condition of his building permit signed by him around January 23rd, 2008. Basically, he is giving you nothing, but you have given him permission to circumvent your LDC code and the state submerged land laws, free parking, ingress and egress over the city park for 10 years already, an ability to develop a small parcel that no other landowner in Destin would dare to ask, and a portion out of the center of the People's Park, which would cause the park to be redesigned and installed again. Plus, The city is to pay for the additional surveys, appraisals, and Phase 1 environmental audits required to accommodate his request. More taxpayer dollars for his benefit. Dewey Destin, on behalf of BI Inc., has delayed the progress of the park for 10 years by claiming an easement. That claim has been proven false by no less than an affidavit of the seller, the title insurance policy, the city attorney who closed the deal, the city's land use attorney, a copy of a document signed by Mr. Destin stating that he has no easement, and by Joe Boyd, who you spent $15,000 to obtain his advice, which you chose to not take. That's at least 6 major sources that have been ignored in addition to our attorney. Never mind that he never mentioned it as he sat on the city council when the park purchase was approved. If the landowner next to Harbor Docks tried to build an illegal dock and shut down Charles Morgan's legal rights to his boat slips on his submerged land, would you go along with that? What I'm trying to figure out is why you're trying so hard to do something special for BI and for what reason. The fleet will be negatively impacted by this, and we feel threatened by this council's actions. This has all the appearances of a private taking for personal gain by an elected official who's up for re-election, no less, which is also illegal. The fleet has sent you a parking study that documents it. As a final nail in the coffin, you received a letter from the state of Florida that very nicely tells you that the land swap deal is not viable. He has not offered enough in trade. His commercial driveway would need to be rezoned to conservation and would have to adhere to the covenants and restrictions which say no commercial activities, and he would have to report his revenues on both parcels wherein the conservation driveway is located, which, if it were too high, would cause the bonds to go from tax-free to taxable. Plus, and probably the reason that all of this is sort of a moot point, is that I don't believe you can reach the 6 signatures that you need for the application, certainly not with 2 abstentions, so why prolong the obvious, spend all the money required to make an application that doesn't comply with your land development code? In summary, the Destin Fishing Fleet is asking you to honor the agreement that the city made with us in good faith in 2010, honor the promises the city made with the state of Florida by securing the park, secure the Restore Act grant for Okaloosa County now while you can, and build a park for the citizens of Destin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I have just one more other point of information regarding the design of the park. The 14-foot pedestrian walkway is designed with the ability for maintenance vehicles and emergency vehicles to reach the dock area.
Thank you. I don't know exactly where to take this discussion. I have prepared some notes of my observations, and mostly I'm going to be repeating things that you've already heard and already decide on, but if you would like to bear with me a few minutes, I'll give you my observations of my several months of being involved in this process. One, there's no doubt in my mind that staff is correct. We keep kicking this can down the road. The grant money is at risk, probably both grants. We've got to, I think the BP has put a time limit that's fairly firm on us. I don't know if the 28th is ironclad, but it certainly sounds like we do have to have a proposal before them in the direction we're going to go. We have to make up our minds prior to the 28th. My personal feel of the letter we just received from the state is they have sent us a letter as politely as they can saying, this is your problem. You gave us a proposal, we gave you a grant, and you need to perform. The hurdles they have put in this letter to me are very difficult, and then they gave us no promise or even an indication that they're going to approve it if we do meet all of the requirements. They're just going to simply accept our request and take it under consideration or under advisement. That, of course, each of you are free to read that letter, and I am no expert on dealing with grant money, or the state for that matter. It's obvious to complete this proposal, we're going to need appraisals, we're going to need surveys, we're going to need to complete the engineering work. We have some very complex legalese that's going to have to be created to meet the state's requirements that Mr. Shirley could address better than I, but that is, those are not going to be easy hurdles. After months of work and expense, we do not even know if they're going to approve the document, as I've already stated. We chose to, if we choose to complete the application, and if I read the document correctly, we still have 5 remaining council members to vote on it. Mr. Dixon, I don't want to put you and our legal counsel better pay attention to me right here. Stop me quickly. Don't answer too quick. But Mr. Dixon, I don't know if you intend to recuse yourself as the vote goes on, but there's a requirement that they have in the letter that does not seem to be negotiable as I read it. 75% of the council is going to have to sign the document for the proposal to be accepted for their consideration, 75%. If we have 2 council members abstain, then if all of you vote for it, we only have 71%. It doesn't work. We can't have an abstention of 2. So if that's the case, there's no going forward, if I read their letter correctly. And please jump in and tell me. I would ask you to let us know if you're still planning on abstaining, but I don't want to put you on the spot.
Well, it's really not putting me on the spot. I did file an abstention last time this was discussed, and I feel like I need to carry that forward. I do feel like it is legitimate in the fact that my wife works for Real Estate Professionals of Destin, which is management firm for the Destin Fishing Fleet. And my stepdaughter also works for the law firm that represents the Destin Fishing Fleet, and there's been a lot of negotiation and we're talking about before I got on the council, things that were put forward, and the fishing fleet has been part of this thing, and I just feel like it's the right thing for me to do. So,
in that case, and despite what you're saying, even if you were able to vote, if any one council member chose to vote against this, and I don't know how your feelings are, but if any one of you vote against it, we can't present an application to the state. And I can quit talking right now if the council is somewhat in agreement with that. Otherwise, I've got 4 options could present to you as possibilities, but there's not much point in it if the state's not going to accept our application to start with, just because we don't have enough council members to sign on. Comment, discussion on that before I go forward?
Mayor, I think there are other options and ideas that need to be discussed tonight as alternatives to going forward with this exact plan. So I would request we continue comment and discussion at this point, and hold off seeing whether we even want to try and have a vote.
Okay. I'm going to quickly summarize this and hope I make sense with it. But again, we can move forward with the construction of the park without the road as originally planned, put up the fence, build the park, and take off. That probably would be the one way of going that we would have the least possibility of losing the grants. However, you wind up with a boardwalk a park that goes down to the boardwalk that we don't have an easement to. The park won't actually go to the boardwalk unless Mr. Destin signs the easement over to us, we're going to be going down to property that is disconnected from the boardwalk itself. Kind of damages the intent of the park. We can build it with the proposed changes and not get the Department of Environmental Protection's permission. We can just go ahead and do it. And then find out if the state is going to demand their money back, or if you read their restrictive covenants literally, they can just simply take the entire park. Frankly, I don't have enough background to speculate on that, but I just can't imagine why they would want to park. But they wrote it into the document, and we agreed to it. That is a possibility. We can continue pursuing an agreement with the state. Again, we risk the grant money with the state. We risk lawsuits from our neighboring property owners. Any adverse actions could inhibit our ability to get grants in the future. That's one thing that really worries me. We have another park we want to build at the concrete plant, and as time goes on, we're going to want to have a relationship with the grant funding folks that we can move forward to apply for grants in the future. My understanding is you make these people too unhappy, you don't honor your agreement, you don't honor your word, there's a risk we might not see another grant for 10 years. And there are cities in the state of Florida, I understand, that haven't seen a grant in over 10 years because of this. They'll tolerate this for so long, and there's too many people that want this money. And at some point, we're going to have to meet it, or they've got a lot of hands being held out that would love to have it. I guess the fourth option, and I apologize to Council Member Braden, who asked me to take on this project and to bring back a good negotiated settlement. I'm bringing you 4 lousy choices, but we could put the property up for sale, put it up for trade, whatever. Give them the grant money back, call it a day, and walk off from it. That is probably the only 4 choices that I can see in this process. And I'm not being critical of anybody involved in the process. I think everybody has a right to protect their own interests, the interests of their family, the interests of their business, and basically that's what's taking place. I think our duty is to protect the taxpayer in this process. And I wished I had a good alternative to hand you, or a good negotiated settlement between all parties, but I cannot offer you that. This is the best I've been able to do. Discussion. Mr. Braden, you're first.
Thank you, Mayor. And like I said before, I hate that I've been put in this position. This should have been settled years ago. And I have tried to take everyone's opinion, advice, with everyone involved. Mr. Destin, if he told me the sky was red, I'd have to believe him. Whatever he says, I want to believe. But I think in the position that I'm in, the bottom line is I have to believe my mayor. I have to believe my staff that has worked on this for 14 years. I have to believe my attorney and what they're telling me. Because if I kept believing what everybody's telling me, they just keep hitting a brick wall. The only thing that I need to do is to do what the mayor, the staff, and the attorney is telling me that I need to do to protect the citizens' dollar that the previous council and the staff has been working on for 14 years. That's just my thoughts right now, Mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Marler?
It would have been so simple if we'd have just split the property down the middle back in 2006. You buy one half, you buy the other half. That's almost what the mayor is saying in his last caveat is, the King Solomon thing to do is split it down the middle and see who wants half and wants half. I have a lot of respect for all the parties, the fishing fleet, the Destin family, and I wish I could opt out in voting sometimes because I think I'm 10th or 12th cousin removed, but I can't do that. I have to be like Rodney. I have to look at the citizens of Destin as a whole. I really don't like the way we've gotten into this thing. It could have been solved, like I said, in 2006. Both parties had the option to purchase. Apparently, either they didn't have the money or it wasn't, the time wasn't right. Now we're in a situation where we don't have a choice if we want to keep the money and run. I mean, I know of 2 other parcels that could be possibly bought for $4.6 million if we had to go that route, but I don't know if they would actually sell it. We've kicked this thing down the road so many times that I just don't see how we can kick it any further. We have to rely on what we ask the mayor to do, and we have to rely on what our staff is doing. That's why we have that staff. That's why we hired Ms. Lejeune. That's why we've done everything we do. So, I mean, my only other question is, as the mayor put, if we do not have the votes, how do we work this? Does it just drop right now? Do we have to have a vote? I guess Mr. Miller might have to explain that one to us. But, or Ms. Lejeune or somebody, if the mayor is saying that we don't have the 75%, with 2 abstentions, what do we do from here?
I don't think we technically have to have a vote, but we do have to have 75% sign the application or the proposal to the state. And so we don't have to have a formal vote, other than if you decide to proceed on the park, then of course we want to readopt the original motion and go to it. Or if you want to stick with our continued negotiations, I guess that,
Mayor,
Mr.
could
Shirley, you
I
want to
just talk
answer
about the
that?
vote?
Yeah, we got the public section.
I just wanted to just tell you, the letter doesn't say that about the 75% vote. I want to make sure everybody's clear on that. The letter says that his initial analysis is not dispositive. That's what it says in his letter. Well, I'm quoting it. A strict reading of the rule indicates that affirmation must be by 3/4, while this initial analysis is not dispositive. That's right. 3/5 of those who...
Excuse me, I'm gonna call the meeting to order. We're down to the council discussion now. And if someone wants to ask you a question, they know what you've got there and they can ask, okay? Now, we're going to limit this strictly to the council unless council wants to ask the audience questions. Mr. Shirley?
Yeah, the only point I wanted to make, Mr. Marler, is that the 75% vote is only required should the city decide to pursue the land exchange application to the state of Florida. The decision to go ahead and build the park would be by simple majority of those who are entitled to vote this evening.
Or either way, there's a motion that's got to be made somewhere.
Yeah, yes, sir.
In the thing. Okay.
Mayor, so what Mr. Shirley's saying is, you're basically saying the same thing the mayor's just saying. We don't have the votes. It's 75%. If the state requires 75%, we don't have the votes to get that. We're at 71.
Well, certainly if the state will not change their opinion concerning, the 75% rule, then we would never be able to satisfy that requirement with the abstentions that we currently have.
Councilmember Foreman?
Thank you, Mayor. I think the way we started this subject today was that we're facing a deadline first to the ORAC committee over $1.25 million. And unless we're prepared to show action at that point in time, then that's the first domino that goes down, at which time we still haven't made a decision on the outcome of this park. In terms of going forward, the original design of the park did not involve boat slips. It was a park, and if you go to the covenants and restrictions in here and read those very carefully, it's a pedestrian park. Pedestrian does not mean automobiles. And it's a conservation area, and that term conservation has come up in other contexts in recent past. But the fact of the matter is that I think the rules they've set out in this document are very clear. It's a people's park. And in this case, it's a park it's designed around to honor the heritage of the city and to make sure that it's an adequate entrance to the harbor. So to start changing the nature of the park, as we have in the case of trying to combine other uses of it, we've basically lost our way. And all the city manager's asking for is the ability to proceed in order to at least drive that one nail that'll get us started. And I have to think that, I'm going to support that position because I see that as an essential necessity. We're going to be sitting here months from now debating on how to satisfy the trust. And they've already, I think, very nicely, as the mayor said, we respect you, but we don't agree with you on that document. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Ramsell.
Thank you, Mayor. In my opinion, we're missing a very central point here. And to me, that central point is this document that we received from the Florida Communities Trust is based on a land exchange. We aren't exchanging land. This is an existing easement. We've heard from all sorts of folks who bring this forward, bring that forward, offering different opinions. I had our clerk email out to you all tonight, and it's in front of you tonight, every single deed on this property from 1936 until we purchased it in 2006. I've also included the survey that was done in 2006. I also included our own title insurance policy written by Jerry Miller in 2006. If you take a look at this, every single document makes note specifically, expressly of this easement or says subject to any easements. The survey from 2006 clearly shows the 8-foot easement. It also clearly shows the 20-foot Destin water users easement. Now, go to 21 December 2006, warranty deed. That is the only deed that has no mention of an easement and no clause stating a subject to. The only deed. Which deed is that? That is the deed prepared for the Trust for Public Land to the City of Destin by our attorney, Jerry Miller. There's no mention of the easement nor any subject to language. The only time. But if you look at our insurance policy, suddenly our insurance policy says we're exempt from coverage because of easements. Why would that be in our insurance policy and exempt us from coverage if there's no easement? Honestly, we have pussyfooted around this issue since I've been on council, before I've been on council, before others have been on council. This is an easement. Mr. Shirley has admitted it's an easement. Steve Schmidt has admitted it's an easement. David Campbell has admitted it's an easement. All the way back 2009, minutes of Harbor CRA, Steve Schmidt notes the existence of the 8-foot easement. Mr. Shirley at the time says, it's okay, we can move it, or we'll just install it as a pathway. 8/14/2013, we're talking about negotiating with Mr. Destin on the easement. In the same year, October, Mr. Shirley is suddenly backpedaling and saying that suddenly now we don't have a right to access, even though he's discussed it before. And David Campbell actually acknowledged it just before that, saying, yes, we do have an easement, and this is a huge issue. What are we going to do? And I found this in existing minutes that we have, 3/18/2013, 8/14/2013, 10/9/2013. Everybody has stated at one point or another that this is an easement. When did it become a problem? When the Land Community Trust said, we don't buy land that has an easement. I called them, I've spoken with them numerous times since the beginning of this year, verbatim, that is what I was told. Suddenly, all conversations subsequent and council and meeting minutes, it's not an easement anymore, it's a driveway. It's a pathway. It's an access way. Suddenly, it's not an easement anymore. To me, that's semantics. Oops, we've got to change our tone. This, to me, suspicious is the best word I can use. Every core of my being has said something is wrong. This started out as such a fantastic thing. And now look, here we are 10 years later, and we're battling over something that's been in existence since 1967. Why? Who is this benefiting? Mr. Destin's not benefiting. It's been there. It was there before he owned the property. I'm really curious why the fleet is so interested. I mean, this is a transaction between the city and obviously the Florida Communities Trust, and we're disputing it with the adjacent neighbor to the west, which is BI Inc. Now, of course, I don't feel we should be disputing anything, but there's been a lot of input from the fleet. And honestly, they're a tenant. They lease property rights, riparian rights that we own. I'd love to hear what property rights the fleet has that involve the actual park. Similarly, the submerged land lease that covers the dock and the slips. They don't own that, the state does. They lease them. They lease our portion because we allow it. Should I mention the 2010 lease agreement for riparian rights, which is subject to a whole other lot of concerns that I've brought up here before this council in times past. Why are we paying for insurance? Why are we adding them? It's endless. I want to know why this piece of property has become such a point of dispute that has involved the fleet. And honestly, I would love you to come up, Ms. Wines, and express why. Because this should be an internal thing going on between us, BI Inc., trying to resolve this. I mean, even the conceptual plans I found in 09 and 10 show the easement. The 2014 one doesn't. But there's been a whole lot of input and a whole lot of concerns brought up. And Mr. Destin brought up a whole new concern about paying for slips. I don't know, perhaps that's something that Mr. Shirley can address, but is the fact, and that's a whole other question. Why suddenly are we paying for slips for 5 years, all the way back to 2010? Why was this not paid for and brought as an invoice to the city in 2010, 2011? You suddenly invoiced us in January. We received an invoice in January of this year for all the prior years. Why now? Does it have anything to do with the fence that we've been repeatedly told to put up? And in fact, this same person has sent emails to the city manager 2010, 2013, repeatedly saying, when are you putting up the fence? Are you going to put up the fence now? These are all emails that have been sent between the two parties. In fact, one of them is a demand. And that, to me, is a problem. Why are we allowing a neighbor to demand to us what to do with our own property? We are in charge of our land, our property. We're the stewards for managing the taxpayers' money and operating in the best interest of the people of Destin. Not one party or two parties, but everybody. And this has brought forth so many issues, so many concerns that it makes my blood boil. At first I was upset. I'm angry now. We want this gorgeous park that Ms. Chabot has worked her butt off to help obtain the grants for, and we're stuck in this quagmire and not moving forward because, well, there's a whole lot of verbs and nouns and adjectives and everything under the sun I could be using, but I choose not to right now because I think I've made my point. I have serious, serious concerns about this whole thing. Number one, on top of everything, it's not a land exchange. This is a matter of land use, not land exchange. And I think that should be the premise of any discussions we have moving forward with the community trust folks. Because that's a whole different formulation of the situation that I think we need to look into. And it might not require this vote. It might not require anything. But I'm telling you right now, if they go to court, they're going to win. They being BI Inc. I've looked at this. I've had an outside attorney look at this. There's an easement. And doctrine of merger, which has been brought up a couple times in terms of, that's a possibility. We should look at the doctrine of merger. Well, I actually did look into the doctrine of merger. And while, yes, that is a distinct possibility with some cases, it actually it can nullify any existing. Do we need to take a break?
We're going to have to take a break. We're going to change the tape right quick.
Okay, sure. I'll pause.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you will start moving toward your seats, do not hurry. We got another minute. We'll restart the meeting again. I'm not going to attempt to, I'm not too sure I can even begin to answer all your questions, but I did want to make one point about your discussions. The fact that this was really more of an exchange of easements more than an exchange of land was presented to the state at the meeting, and they chose to completely ignore it. That question was raised to them as I thought, a possible easy way out. They could simply say, this isn't a land exchange, you don't need an application, just go do it. Did not work. And they did not address it in their letter, which I assume means they're going to ignore it, and they didn't give us any credence to it.
And that is because they did not have copies of all the deeds, the survey, and the title insurance policy, which they do now. So I would anticipate hearing from them. But I was talking about the doctrine of merger, which had been brought up as a possible reason the easement might have been extinguished. And in fact, the doctrine of merger does state that the deed would not so much merge as it would supersede ancillary and outside agreements and contracts. Whatever promises are not expressed in the deed are effectively nullified under the execution of a merger doctrine. Okay, that sounds, there's a possibility. However, in Daniels versus Anderson, it states that courts have held an easement created by a contract but not in the deed would survive the merger doctrine. And furthermore, it also states that we discern no principal basis and defendants offer none from arguing against application of the merger rule where the party claims that a mutual mistake or even fraud existed at the time of conveyance of the deed. So if the easement was accidentally left off, that's one thing, but this gives you an idea as to how an easement would be viewed in terms of the doctrine. And the interesting thing of that is if we go with the very strict interpretation that all ancillary and outside agreements and contracts would be nullified, well, then the lease agreement for riparian rights would also have been nullified and voided. You know, I've said a whole lot, and yes, I got a little bit wound up, but I think we're all wound up. I mean, this is a very serious issue. It's one that's very close to all of us. I mean, we want this park. I mean, my gosh, we've all fought tooth and nail for whatever reasons, but this park was meant to be a beautiful public benefit to the entire city of Destin. And that has gotten lost in all the back and forth with attorneys and mediators and different parties weighing in. I really would like to see us formulate a new strategy, perhaps schedule a workshop where we can sit down and strategize the best way forward so that we keep this park. We want to keep this park. Others want to see us keep this park, but we've got to come together. And I want to make sure that the Florida Communities Trust is aware of everything that's going on. Because my conversations, others' conversations, the meeting, apparently there are things of which they are not aware that they should be. And I don't want to feel as if I'm not informing them of something. I want to make sure they know what's going on and we all work together. Because I'm sure they don't want us to lose this either. I mean, they don't want a landlocked piece of land for all essential purposes. So that would be my suggestion. And, you know, in lieu of all the other things that have evolved as a result of the park and rights and this and that, I would like to request a review of the lease for riparian rights. I think that's something we really need to look at, especially since a lot of the clauses that were put in it were done when the museum was going to be on the fishing fleet property, and they were left in. In fact, they were part of their DO at one point. I think that's something we need to revisit. So, thank you for listening.
Mr. Miller, do you have a comment?
Yes, previously we've had a report characterizing some opinion by me, which doesn't exist. I've not rendered an opinion. And also characterizations of the title insurance policy and what it represents. The title insurance policy as regards these easement issues should only be used to understand and show that the title insurance company did not insure over any claims of easement. That's not to have you draw the conclusion that the easements are somehow guaranteed or insured or evidenced by the insurance policy. So I just have to take exception to the council members' characterization of both opinion by me and the effect of the insurance policy. It's my contribution to you that those are mischaracterized by her comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shirley, do you have any comments?
No, I disagreed with a lot of what I heard, but I don't think it would be productive for me to go into detail.
Councilmember Marler.
Mr. Shirley, maybe you can answer this question, or Ms. Chabot. If we choose to go forward with the park plans and the other parties choose to go to court to try to figure out what's going on, does that hamper us from still trying to get it? If they start litigation, does that mean we don't get nothing, or can we still move forward if they want to start litigation?
The way that would work is if they sue us, they would file an action for declaratory and injunctive relief, I assume, at the outset. And in all likelihood would request a temporary injunction. And there are specific requirements for establishing that a temporary injunction is necessary and justified. And and that involves a hearing with testimony. Because it's a standing motion. And the court would rule with regard to the temporary injunction. If the court enjoins temporarily the project, then we would not be able to go forward during the time that the injunction is in effect. If the court denies the temporary injunction, then we could go forward with the park. The risk at that point becomes if we end up losing the case, the litigation at some point, then the city might be on the hook for damages to the parcel as a consequence of losing the access point.
Okay, well, you kind of sort of answered it, but we could still go ahead and pursue this on the 28th if we chose to if we do it the way we were talking earlier, and then hope for the best that nobody files a lawsuit or we figure out another way, but.
I don't
want to lose the money.
I don't want to mischaracterize anything here. Lawsuits have been threatened on more than one occasion, okay? And so while I cannot state with any certainty, it would not surprise me at all if a lawsuit was filed as a result of the city's decision to build a fence and formally pursue construction of the park without more.
Okay, thank you.
What kind of threat would a lawsuit pose on us receiving that grant money? I mean, I know you can't speak for the board, the ORAC board, but on July 28th, do if they file a lawsuit prior to that, what? I mean, logically, you would think it would.
That would be a quick amount of time in which to prepare and file a lawsuit.
Sure. So, I mean, I would be thinking from the
would
board
be-
standpoint,
it
that
would
would
be-
certainly factor into their decision.
It would be only the existence of a court order temporarily enjoining the project, in my opinion, would have an effect. Pendency of the lawsuit probably would not have an effect.
Two.
Councilmember. Excuse me, Councilmember Dixon?
I have chose not to participate in discussion of this because I'll be abstaining from this, but is there such a thing as an expedited hearing of some kind that could be performed to where we could not be held up for such a long period of time? Because we know, basically, or we've been told tonight that a lawsuit is forthcoming. I would think, as Mr. Morgan said at our last meeting, we're going to be sued from one side or the other on this thing, and I just wonder if there is a way that an expedited hearing could be accomplished.
You can always ask for that, and a court might go along with it, and the court might even, under the right circumstances, go along with it over the objection of the other party. But usually when a hearing is expedited, it's because both parties want to expedite it, and so they agree to have that process followed.
Councilmember Braden?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Shirley, can you explain to me what a DEC Act is? We filed a DEC Act?
It's a declaratory judgment action under Chapter 86 Florida statutes. And that gives the court, generally that is filed together with a request for, oftentimes for injunctive relief as well. So it's called an action for declaratory and injunctive relief. And that is the most likely type of action that we would see here.
So would it not benefit us to file a DEC Act to speed this process up?
The city could file, and I did discuss with the prior city manager the possibility of the city filing a declaratory judgment action, asking a court to decide whether or not there were any rights in the easement or access across the property by the adjacent property owner.
What is your personal opinion on that?
What I wanted to do is, subsequent to this evening, is get with the attorney that the city hired, the outside attorney, Mr. Boyd, and get his thoughts, because there are tactical reasons why you may want to do one remedy versus another, and then probably spend some time with the city manager fleshing out some of those possibilities, and then in the future present those options to the city council.
I think the question was, do we have time for that? It's still.
Well, that was assuming that the city decides, not to continue with the land exchange, but rather to go ahead and build the park. Then we would evaluate those possibilities. I mean, the city, the main issue is whether or not the city builds a fence now or at some stated date in the future. And the city can control the advent of litigation by controlling the date on which that access is going to be curtailed. Because that is really the moment in time where you force the BI Inc.'s hand as to the relief that they have to obtain.
Councilmember Morgan.
Yes, I think trying to put this in perspective, if we go ahead and take a positive action to build a park in order to secure the funding, the grant funding, which we almost know for certain is going to be asked about, then we can be dealing simultaneously with any potential legal action. And by that I mean we can go ahead and prompt the issue. It's cheaper than losing the grant by many times. And I think at least we would be in a good position. The most we can do is secure the site. In the meantime, that can't cause serious damage to anything. So that would be my preference.
Councilmember Morgan.
When we purchased the property in 2009, right? Was 09 the date? 6. When we purchased it, were we aware of the clause in there about an easement on the property? I mean, were we aware the easement issue existed then?
I was not. I cannot say because I wasn't involved with I was not involved with that purchase. So I can't say what, I know I wasn't aware of it, but I wasn't involved with the purchase. But it was in the record because it's in the instruments that are in the chain of title.
So it's probably safe to say that with a certain amount of due diligence, someone would have been aware of that.
There's a doctrine called constructive notice, which charges the purchaser with knowledge of that, even if the purchaser hasn't actually looked at it.
Trust for public land to purchase the property.
Right, okay.
Mr. Morgan, are you finished?
I think so.
Councilmember Marler.
All right, we keep mentioning the fence. First off, as I recall, at the last council meeting, we brought up the subject of fencing off everything except the driveway, which was to be of good faith while we tried to do something, and this council voted it down. What is pressing us to do to fence the entire property? Does this have? Well, is there a caveat to getting the money and going forward with the plans while we try and figure out what we're going to do, or is there?
If you want my recommendation with regard to the fence, and this has been my recommendation ever since 2009 when the conditions were placed in the building permit. That is that the city write a letter stating that the fence will be built within a finite period of time. That condition requires 90 days notice, so that it gives any parties that are actively utilizing that, especially during the tourist season, the ability to make alternative arrangements, or in the alternative, to get ready to sue the city. But at least we know around when that date is, you can predict when that date is going to occur.
So the short of this is that even if we said tonight we want to go forward and we're going to build a fence, we're still talking 90 days before a fence could go up.
Well, you don't have to give the 90 days notice. I'm just saying that I would recommend it because you could still go forward with the final plans, and the city would still be in a position to be demonstrating that it is preparing to build the park.
Because one of the main issues apparently is the fact that the park is technically a parking lot right now. We won't say who's there. It could be for any, the tourists are there parking, and there's been people that's, been complaining about that. At least that's where I'm getting it from, is that why aren't we starting a city park? Why are we letting Mr. Destin and BI do certain things? And I think that's probably where that's coming from about the fence. So, there is no easy solution for this. Honestly, to try to help the Destin Corporation out or BI out and to try to do what the citizens want and try to get the money. But all I can see is exactly what Mr. Morgan said. I see lawsuits from both sides no matter which way we go.
Which would certainly...
I'm sorry. If it pleases the council, I think everyone's had a chance to speak. Maybe we should consider getting a motion on the table as to the direction we wish to take so we can discuss something specific. It's a pleasure of the council. I obviously can't make a motion.
I would make a motion to set up an alternate time for a workshop to discuss strategizing our way forward in detail.
I think we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
No.
Make your motion.
The motion is to move forward with building the park, take the necessary action to secure it in the time frame which is permitted by law.
Mr. Shirley, you want to comment as what's permitted by law? Does that need more definition, or does that need a time certain?
That'll be a matter of hot debate, I think. I would recommend that you move to go forward with building the park and to provide adjacent property owners with 90 days' notice of the city's intent to fence off the park at that time.
That is my motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it, Mayor.
We have a motion. We have a second. Discussion.
I have a question. Does the motion, would that include fencing off the easement as well, or would it be leaving the easement open for access?
Unless was modified, the motion was to fence off the park, which would mean the entire park, unless you want to modify that.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to do any constructive work on the property with traffic moving through it. It's a pedestrian safety issue as well as a vehicle issue.
Discussion? I have a motion. I'm sorry. Councilmember Morgan, you got in first.
Mayor, my original idea, and I've made my position on this very clear, was that the amenities that Mr. Destin was going to offer were indeed a public benefit, and it was a way of us regaining some value to the property that was, in hindsight's 2020, but a terrible use of $4.6 million with no riparian rights, and this was a way to recapture that. Our city staff advises that advise us that we should move forward with the park. And for me, not that I would ever make a decision based on this, I would make my decisions on what I think is best for the taxpayer and for our constituents. But if I had known I would be in this situation now, I wouldn't have run for city council in the first place. That among well, you ran for re-election. You were warned.
Now you know what your father went through.
I'm not sure he knew what he went through. I hate this, and you know, on one side, my wife is best friends with party of one side here, and I've become best friends with another, and both parties involved have played an integral role in my life and my family's life here in Destin. And it's small town politics, I guess. So,
Councilmember Ramswell.
Mr. Shirley, I have a question. Just as what does title insurance typically protect, or what's the point? Just if you could.
Usually what will happen from time to time is that there will be defects in the closing process. For instance, a lien is not removed from the property that was required to be removed, or there will sometimes be irregularities in the way the paperwork is executed, such that perhaps a party that whose signature was required in order to complete the transaction, their signature was not actually included on the closing documents. And so there's any number of little technical issues like that when they are discovered would go back to an attorney who is hired by the title insurance company and whose job it would be to get with the parties and to work that issue out. Usually it doesn't result in litigation. Sometimes it does, but a lot of times it's just working to straighten something out that went a little haywire in the closing process. Now, it also insures against bad title, and that is a party transacting title to a parcel that they do not have title to. And so that is the kind of like the worst case, but title insurance is a kind of insurance where the work, with most insurance companies, they actuarially decide what their risks are going to be going forward, and then they budget for that. With title insurance, all the work is front-loaded. The title company does a whole bunch of work with the title in order to help ensure that they won't have a claim after the transaction is completed. And so the title insurance kind of pays for that work up front, so that the claim is less likely to occur after the fact.
So when you have exceptions to coverage written into your policy, does that mean if it is forced to go to litigation, your insurance won't cover you?
That is exactly what it means.
So looking at our title policy insurance, it's specifically number 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10 on Schedule B, exceptions from coverage, lists by book and page number the easements of record on this property. Meaning, if we go to court on this issue and they say, yes, there's an easement, we're out of luck, right? Because it's exempted.
The issue of whether there will be coverage is something that will have to be worked out with the title insurance company at the appropriate time.
Thank you, that answers my question.
Councilmember Mueller.
Okay, if we're doing this for 90 days, that comes to October 18th, which puts us past the Seafood Festival, which will be the first weekend of October, pretty much the end of the season. And by that time, we'll know one way or the other, whether BI or the fishing fleet or whoever's going to sue us or has done that, but we may have already gotten the ballistic process going to me for trying to get the grant money. Because and then, that's the way I see it. I mean, I don't see any other way around it. I mean, with all respect to BI and the Destin family, I mean, we've kicked this can, we've tried, but now we risk losing money that we need desperately to build a park, and we've got to do something. I mean, I'm like Chad, I'm kind of wonder why I'm up here right now. But we got to do what's right for the citizens and the entire community, and we just cannot just look at one issue.
Mr. Morgan.
I think it was irresponsible to purchase the property with the existing easement, knowing in the covenant of restrictions that you can't have an easement. Can't rectify that, or we've been trying to for quite some time. Would it not be irresponsible, and to Ms. Chabot, if she's still here, would it not be irresponsible to approach this board on July 28th, knowing very well that this is going to be subject to litigation? I mean, we know it is. So wouldn't it be irresponsible to, and I hate to say this because I want a park and I want the grant money, and if it came between us losing $2.6 million, whatever the Community Trust gave us, or losing the 1.2 million from the Restore Act. I would have a hard time, voting in support of the easement. But is it not irresponsible to take this money knowing that we're probably pending litigation?
Councilmember.
I hate to say it.
Councilmember Morgan, I think
valid
that you're asking for a subjective opinion from a
Sure.
matter of staff,
No,
and we're here to present the facts and act on the will of the council.
I think the question's rhetorical. And I apologize, but we made one irresponsible decision with money we could be on the hook for, and we're going to trade it with another, I think. I really do, and it's not because I favor one property owner over the other.
City Manager?
Mr. Webb, are you set up for the vote with 2 abstentions? Okay. I'm going to, did you push the button again, Mr. Morgan? Okay. I'm going to call for the vote. A yes is for the immediate construction of the fencing and starting of the park.
I need to declare my abstention again, so
Okay.
I think everybody knows why. Again, my father has a proprietary interest in BI Inc.
And I believe we have some paperwork we need to fill out for those that
Do
abstain.
I need to declare it again before I vote?
Yeah.
Okay. My wife works for Real Estate Professionals of Destin, which is the management firm for the Destin Fishing Fleet. And my stepdaughter works for the law firm that represents the Destin Fishing Fleet.
All right. We have 3 yes, 2 no's. Mr. Shirley, is there anything else we need to do on this matter? Does staff need any direction or
No,
anything? Just start the process?
No, I believe the city manager will be writing a short letter to the adjacent property owners announcing the decision of the council.
Thank you. Oops, excuse me. I believe that was the last item on the agenda. I didn't skip any this week, did I?
We won't let you.
Comments from the public. Anyone wish to discuss any subject? Don't forget to state your name and address, please, sir.
Thank you. Scott Monson, 97 Sunflower Court. Thanks for hearing me again. So I just want to urge the city to act expeditiously to enforce their ordinances by removing the porta potty at the corner of Sunflower Court and Rosalie. I can tell you it's a stinking nuisance. The scent was so bad this weekend, somebody came from the beach to use it, shook her head, and then had her school-aged child hold a towel in front of her while she proceeded to urinate right next to the porta potty. So enforce your ordinances, get that stinky mess out of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Mitchell?
Steve Menschel, 65 Siesta Bluff, Destin. Council, real quick, just we all know what's going on in the United States of America. I'd like to make a suggestion for the council to possibly do something in their upcoming meetings to show support our law enforcement. Some kind of proclamation, something that enforces our support of the men and women that keep us all safe. Just bring that to for your consideration. That's it. Thank you.
Excellent idea. Gentlemen and ma'am, we are adjourned.